Reportable minutes, okay. Mr. Miller.
Board of Harbor Commissioners met in closed session and gave District Council appropriate direction, but took no reportable action. That's the only report.
Is there a motion to adjourn? Yes.
I'll move.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye. Well, do we need to do a roll call for that? To adjourn the closed session?
We have 4 out of 5.
Okay.
All right, good evening. Welcome to the San Mateo County Harbor District Board of Harbor Commissioners regular meeting for April 19, 2017. It's good to see everybody so interested in Harbor District business tonight. So maybe we have a roll call, please.
Commissioner Bernardo,
Here.
Commissioner Brennan,
Here.
Commissioner King-Raleigh, present, Commissioner Yanis,
Here.
President Mateo.
Here. All right, prior to getting into public comments for items not on the agenda, there's an announcement by Mr. McGraw.
And thank you, President Matoush. We do have a couple of new staff members. I'd like to ask our Interim Director of Administrative Services to introduce.
Yes, I'd like to introduce Boomer Henthorn, who is our new accounting manager. Oh, is he not here?
That hire didn't last long.
Yeah, there we go.
And we have two.
Grab Willie, too.
Are they maybe in another room waiting?
That's exactly it. Make it much easier to introduce. Okay. Come on in. Boomer Henthorn, who is our new accounting manager. He comes to us from private sector, but he has 5.5+ years experience working in Hawaii with public accounning and the Hawaiian Pension Fund. And we're very excited to have him join us.
Welcome aboard.
Thank you. And Lori Millward, who many of you have met because she was working with us through a temp firm for quite a while. But she survived an arduous recruitment process and came out on top and has been hired as our admin assistant one. And all of us are really happy to have extra hands on deck as a regular employee.
Great. Welcome.
Excellent.
Or not.
Seeing no speaker slips for public comments for items not on the agenda, we'll go on with item C on the agenda, and that's commission.
I had one. I checked both boxes.
Come up and, oh,
Bruce McKinley, Moss Beach, pleasure voter. I would like to just ask the commission to start looking into, or continue looking into, adding more slips in the harbor. I'm currently on a 5-year waiting list, which might be 6 or 7 or 10 years, who knows? But there's been plans on the books to build more slips for as long as I've been around here, 20 years, 25, 30 years. So I would like to see some more slips in the harbor. Thank you.
all right, thank you. Mr. McKee. So this item C is commissioner comments. So commissioners may make public statements limited to 5 minutes. Do we have any commissioner comments by any of our commissioners?
I do.
Commissioner Brennan.
Thank you. I wanted to let the public know that the Half Moon Bay Junior Lifeguard Program is getting underway for the summer of 2017. And this is a program that's sponsored by the California State Parks. So if you know anybody interested, please pass on the information. This is a program for young people ages 9 to 15. It promotes ocean safety and environmental awareness. The sessions are from June 19th to July 14th, and the second session is July 17th to August 11th. To participate, there are tryouts. The tryouts are held at Half Moon Bay High School pool, and there are 3 tryout dates on May 6th, 27th, and July 8th. And if you'd like more information, you can go to the SCHD sla.org website, or you could just send me an email at, through my website, which is sabrinabrennan.com, and I'll be happy to pass on more information about this. Thank you.
I just wanted to ask the general manager to please thank the city manager of South San Francisco for hosting the Oyster Point Liaison Committee on Monday, which was a couple days ago, March 17th. I thought it was a fruitful meeting, and I'm just very appreciative of the time that they took. And I'm glad that we're on relatively good footing as we move forward. So please thank them for hosting us there. And I want to thank the public. There were quite a few coastside residents who were there. I wanted to thank them too. I thought that it was a good learning experience for everyone.
I'll pass that on.
Thank you.
Item D is our consent calendar. A lot of different views on a consent calendar and how it should be handled. However, Commissioner Brennan felt slighted at our March meeting for a number of reasons, and I've already had a request from Commissioner Brennan to pull every single item off the consent calendar and discuss it. I would like to say that items 1 and 5 will require action by the board. Consent items that are not approved will go to the back of the meeting and be discussed on the back end.
Actually, I'd like to ask that when consent comes up on, at a meeting, that the board president ask the board if they'd like to pull items off consent before we take a motion and a second to approve consent. That way, if a commissioner would like to pull something, they can. And I was hoping that was going to happen tonight because I don't want to pull every item. I actually would like to pull item 1, 2, 4, and 7. And that's all. And just so the public understands, on consent, we have a consent calendar of items that don't get discussed at the meeting. Any commissioner has the right to pull an item off consent, and any member of the public also has the right to pull items off consent. If there's something on the consent calendar and you want to hear the staff report and you want to make a comment or hear a board discussion, all you have to do is tell the chair that you'd like to pull it off consent.
And there is disagreement with Commissioner Brennan's last statement as to the accuracy and the truth of that. However, we've had a request to pull 1, 2, 4, and 7. So do we have a motion to accept items 3, 5, 6, and 8?
Point of order, can we have clarification from Stephen Miller? Is there anything untrue about what I said?
Members of the public have absolutely no right to demand that items get pulled off of the consent calendar. That is completely within the authority of the board.
The Board of Supervisors always allows the public to pull items off consent.
That may be true. They may have a policy that they have adopted to create that. but
All
that
the
is not a
boards,
legal-
every board on the coast side except this one, including the City of Half Moon Bay, Montero Water Sanitary District, Granada Sanitary District, SAM, Coastside Water District, you name it, every one of them allows public members to pull things off the consent calendar. So we should be doing that too.
Sounds like we
You're
need
asking
to
me a
develop
legal
policy.
question. I'm giving you a legal answer. I'm not
Okay.
We need to
telling you what you
develop
should do.
policy for that in the future. We don't just suddenly announce things at the board level and change
This is
without discussing.
accepted practice in the state of California, Tom.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to take items 3, 5, 6, and 8 on consent. Motion and second, so roll call.
Commissioner Brennan,
Aye.
Commissioner Lorenz,
Aye.
Commissioner Mateusz,
Aye.
Commissioner Chancarelli.
Aye.
Commissioner Bernardo.
Aye.
All right, moving on to item E, the ADA transition plan draft review and presentation. Mr. Moran, maybe we have a staff report, and this is an information-only item.
Good evening, Commissioners. As President Mateusz says, this is information only. It's an update on the ADA transition plan, which is still in progress. In January of 2017, the district initiated an RFP and subsequent agreement with consultant Sally Swanson Architects to prepare an ADA transition plan for the district. purpose of the ADA transition plan is to identify ADA challenges and solutions so corrections can be prioritized. Today we've got Jasper Kirsch from Sally Swanson Architects here. He'll give us a brief overview and update on our progress. Hi, Jasper.
It's fixed.
Thank you, John. And I want to first thank the commission as well as the district for inviting me here today. Yeah, I'm going to review, kind of go over this project that we've been working on with the district regarding the Americans with Disability Act and coming into compliance with those requirements. So first, I'm going to do a little background on what this effort is all about the self-evaluation and transition plan. Then I'll walk us through some of the common findings we've come across at each of the harbor locations as well as this facility, and then talk about next steps. My name is Jasper Kirsch. I'm with a firm out of San Francisco, California, called Sally Swanson Architects. I've been working exclusively in ADA with many cities, counties, special districts, as well as state departments such as Caltrans and the Department of Corrections, doing exactly what we'll be going over today. So what is the ADA? I'm sure everyone's heard of the Americans with Disabilities Act. This was it's a broad-reaching civil rights law covering all persons with disabilities and a variety of disabilities, from cognitive to physical and even temporary disabilities. And as part of that requirement, when that went into law, every public facility is required to do what's called an ADA self-evaluation and transition plan. And what that is assessing your facilities and infrastructure and coming up with a plan to meet ADA compliance. And there's two parts to that. One is a self-evaluation, where you look at your policies, procedures, practices to see if there's any barriers that are not physical barriers. So that would be through communication, as well as information that goes out. Today I'm going to be focusing on the other side of this, which is the brick and mortar. So in the transition plan, we're looking at the physical environment and whether there are any barriers that would prohibit someone from participating in a program, service, or activity provided by the district. The third part is sharing what we're doing with the disability community or the public to get their feedback, because your constituents will give you insights that my team or the district staff may not experience. And we want to fold that into how we prioritize our findings and begin to take action to meeting compliance. So when we get into a transition plan, there's 4 required items that you need. You need to first identify those barriers, describe how you're going to fix those barriers. Third, we need to schedule those items over a period of time, so it really becomes a plan. And then fourth is designating an official responsible or ADA coordinator that is put in charge of kind of managing those items. When we're looking at facilities, we're looking at program access, and that's a broad term. That when you think of accessing a place, you think of a facility like a building, but a Title II entity or a public entity is required to provide program access. So that's your permanent facilities as well as any temporary events that might occur. On all levels, we need to ensure access to those programs. So what we're looking at is how does someone get from A to B, whether it's from the parking lot, nearby transit stop, drop-off areas, and really all public and common use areas. So that would include the businesses that are leased, as well as the pier, the docks, all those elements. So when we do the inspections, we do a detailed report itemizing each of these barriers we've identified, including a description of it, how we're gonna fix it, the code sections, photo, as well as a cost estimate, so we can begin to kind of plan that out.
Could we back up one slide?
Sure.
I just wanted to point out that I can't read that writing, and then in the packet, it's also so tiny, I can't actually read a lot of these slides. Is there a way we could get a PDF or something that we
Yeah, so
can?
this is the PDF. We can definitely get you a version.
Okay.
This report here is just an example report. It's not directly from, but I absolutely understand. We can get that to you in another format. We can zoom in as well.
Okay, thank you.
I also noticed, because it's going through a PDF, we're not getting that full screen.
We should be able to get full screen.
Just click the little plus by
Right here.
64%.
Right,
over
and
the
that'll make
left
it
of
to
64%.
100% and see how that works.
Don't go,
No.
No, I'm
Come
going to,
or it's that'll do it too,
Full
but there's a
screen.
little,
where's the
Full
scroll?
screen.
There it is.
That's a little better, thank you.
An additional thing, and the draft plan is on our website as well, and the PowerPoint.
So I'm going to go over some of the common findings we've identified, and the reason I picked, oh, let me back it up a little bit. So starting with Pillar Point, you can see kind of the path of travels we looked at connecting to the different various program areas. So each one of these numbers at the top and bottom kind of links back up to the report identifying those items we've found. One of the most, in general, I think around 80% of complaints start with someone arriving at a site. So I wanted to just kind of point out some of these easier to fix items that are common throughout the different facilities.
Could we back up one slide? Because
Sure.
you went through that one kind of fast. Were you aware of the coastal trail segment that comes through the harbor and where that's been designated?
Is that this area? This part?
It's a contiguous trail. I could show it to you later. I just wondered if you were aware of that.
Yes, I believe we looked at portions of that. Is it?
It just looks disconnected with these red dots, so I was a little confused. It doesn't look like the contiguous segment that we had mapped out.
Okay.
Meaning we, the community, the Mid-Coast Community Council, and the
Okay.
county.
And again, we're still in working
I
through
know.
that process,
Yeah.
so I'd love to talk with you afterwards
Okay.
and identify that and make sure we take a look at that before we complete this project.
Thank you.
So, thank you. So again, parking is probably one of the number one areas where we get complaints. It's also one of the relatively low-cost things to bring up to code. And this was something throughout. We found newer parking spaces, as well as some of the older ones that are perhaps the paint is faded, perhaps the access aisle's a little small. Again, so these are some examples. We also looked at all the restrooms, the businesses. So here are some other examples. The entrance to the businesses. I know there's already a project in place to mitigate some of those issues. Of course, it's older sidewalk. We're getting some severe slopes at the entrance of those buildings. Again, we not only want to flag these now, obviously to identify them, but we want to begin documenting what we fixed. So again, part of this plan is really to have that plan and begin to document that progress that's being made. So again, also we looked at some of the trails in connection. This was to the kayak center where we get some loose gravel, water pooling, and those are the items we're going to really be focusing on, prioritizing those areas that have the highest kind of pedestrian traffic routes, and then working our way to those lesser priority areas. Same thing with the Oyster Point, focusing on some of the parking issues. Down here, we have a brand new one that was perfect, but again, some of the older ones, the paint's fading. So we'll be looking at putting that down in the plan and scheduling updates to that.
Could we go back to the map for just 1 second? We just kind of went through really fast. All the little numbered things with the lines,
Mhm.
where in this presentation does it say what those numbered things are?
In the report portion?
Is that here somewhere?
So there's the map, but then in the report, you'll see a gray line that has an item number.
Where is that? Is that here?
On the presentation, it's in the report. The report is online, there's a hard copy in the,
Let me back it.
Yeah, we don't
office.
have it.
There's a link provided.
So it should look like this.
So it's
here.
not in
It's
staff
not,
report?
it's not in the package.
Okay.
So you'll see in this example, there's an item number and a description of the location.
Oh, okay.
That's in the full report.
In the full report is just the draft at present, because as Jasper said, we're still in progress here.
Okay.
Just a preliminary report.
So other issues, with older pathways, we began to get uplift from routing, and we want to make sure that we're maintaining those facilities to avoid any injuries, any complaints, really reduce liability. And it's always more cost effective to be proactive than reactive. So this really allows the district to really get a grip on what is going on the site, and then begin to identify some of those funding sources and spread it out over time to do it within a reasonable, within reasonable budget. So other things we looked at are the gangways, the boat slips. While there are some exceptions, due to the tidal flows, et cetera, it's a more complex area, but we also looked at those areas, identifying any barriers and what we could do to bring that up to code. Here at the district administration building, I think one of the key things you'll notice is the main entrance is a staired entrance. So we want to be thinking about that. How can we deal with this programmatically? If someone has to wheel through here and around the back, we get some slope issues here. And there are ways to work with, kind of solve those kind of problems without immediately going into construction. We can look at providing doorbell, relocating programs, et cetera. As one of the kind of main things with this facility. So the next steps will be taking all this information we've gathered. We go through, put a numbering system for a prioritization based on where programs are located and what kind of pedestrian activity we're getting. So we're looking at main entrances, main pathways. We began to score everything based on that, also working closely with the district to identify higher priority areas. And then secondary, we're looking at the severity of each barrier. So are we looking at a ramp that's just barely over what's required, or something there is no ramp, there's just steps? And those type items become a higher severity number. So we began to break down this report into these kind of sections, and we want to start with the high priority items first. The third part to this is sharing this with the public to get that input as well, in prioritizing the different barriers, as well as identifying what they're experiencing. So this document becomes a living document. It's not just the report. We really want to set up a system in place to begin tracking our progress, coming up with a plan. Budgets change, funding changes, and you need to be able to revisit this and adjust as needed. But you do need to move forward. It shows a good faith effort, and it meets federal regulation, really. And that's exactly what we're doing. Any questions or comments?
Commissioner Crowe.
So this is actually probably more geared towards the general manager. So Steve, given, I'm just looking at the Oyster Point photos in here, and, you know, the boundaries seem to be ever-changing as we go through the evolution of the JPA
Right.
process. So, is this presentation taking the 2011 boundaries into consideration, or is this today? One, and two, if it's not, I mean, you know, we could probably buy some time if we prioritize it, say, Pillar Point, if we move forward with doing ADA kind of restructuring, if you will.
Well, I think clearly, given that the west end of Oyster Point is going to be
Right.
under a significant amount of construction, the fact that the issues have been identified is one thing, but I can't imagine that we would be having to do anything
Right.
prior to August if the issue has gone away. We're still working on the draft document.
Right.
We've got some steps to go before we complete it, and then we prioritize based on those sort of circumstances, the severity of the issue, the programmatic need that it meets to fix it.
Okay, I'm just trying to understand the
Yeah.
timing based on the
Yeah.
evolution of the
Right.
process.
Right, and the consultant, Jasper, is aware of the evolving situation at Oyster Point.
I have a
Thank you.
question.
So most of our efforts are going on to the east portion.
Right, okay. I mean, because we know that there's going to be a portion that's still under Harbor District jurisdiction. So that's, if we prioritize that part of it, assuming this goes before Pillar Point, whatever, I mean, this is for the board to decide, but just making sure that our portion that we know is gonna be under our jurisdiction is a high priority for Oyster Point versus other parts closer to the South City side.
Absolutely. We're gonna work close together to identify those areas as well as the priority levels, because if there any projects are in the pipeline, aside from perhaps that one, you know, we wanna be able to fold that into our data before we finalize it, because we wanna see, we need to spread out the funding source. So if there's already a project in the pipeline, you know, we wanna take credit for that. We also begin to sort out like maintenance items. Which items can we fix easily with staff that's already out there, you know, looking at this stuff.
Low hanging fruit.
Exactly.
Great, thank you.
Commissioner Brennan.
Thank you. If you could bring back the slide of OPM, that would be great.
Moving on to
The map.
Yeah. And this is really picking up on the last comment, which I agree is a concern. You know, it looks like you've got a lot of items specified, so there's work that's been done in areas that we don't currently have any jurisdiction over because of the big development project that's happening at Oyster Point. So I would certainly hope that we wouldn't be wasting any time or money on planning for things that are gonna be completely redone. We know they're changing the whole layout of Oyster Point with a new road that's gonna go in, that's gonna be waterfront, and the recapping of the landfill to address the landfill subsidence and the flooding that's occurring is really gonna change everything about the landscape out there. So I just wanna make sure that we're not, because it looks like we've already spent some energy in areas that don't pertain to us, make sure that we don't do that going forward. And the future of our involvement at Oyster Point is unknown at this point. The district hasn't, and the city hasn't decided what the future of this district's involvement is yet. It's very much up in the air. All we know right now is that we have a JPA that ends in 10 years, which is a very short-term situation. So I just want to make sure that we're not focusing attention and money, you know, on doing consulting that isn't relevant to the reality of the situation.
I believe what my commissioners are hinting towards is what is the process for us to submit observations, points of information? How do we collaboratively, do we send it to Jasper, do we give it to you? If we've got a question, how do we make sure that the concerns of individuals are heard?
I'd go through John.
So John and I have been working together. He's my main contact.
Yeah, I've already been passing on concerns from the properties to Jasper, and we have from the onset in January, we have obviously, and we still do, control the western portion of OPM, and we knew that that would not transfer until August. We knew that from the onset, and we've been working closely with Jasper to put less of a priority on the western portion, but we still did not want to completely ignore it because it was going to be in place until August, and it started in January. So we have been working to prioritize the eastern portion, and we'll continue to do so. Now, we're going to still have more public outreach as well, but any concerns that any of the commissioners or any of the public have with ADA issues, please forward them to me, and I'll continue to work with Jasper on them.
Okay.
We've already, based on the preliminary report and my discussions with Jasper and his team, we've already began to address and document all of the issues that both Pillar Point and Oyster Point that we've corrected. So we're continuing to correct the low-hanging fruit, as we've discussed. Things that we can easily change, like the height of some of the dog waste bag dispensers, and these things that we can fix, we've been addressing already.
Okay, so just so I understand correctly, we're not spending any time on anything that we aren't going to be responsible for when the development starts, right?
That's accurate to most degree. However, we've not, from January till August, we're not going to ignore, and we've not ignored easy things that we can repair
Okay.
ourselves,
Yeah,
but
makes
no
sense.
significant
No
monies.
construction
No.
plans
No.
for something that's going to be ripped
No
out?
construction, is being planned at present based solely on this report or this ADA transition plan, because it's not even been done yet.
Right, but I just don't want to waste, like, why would we plan for
Of
something
course.
that's going to be ripped out, you know?
Of course.
Right.
Okay, so I have a couple of specific ADA questions. One is, I got a message from the public regarding this project from Mr. James McMurray. I don't know if he's here. He's a veteran with Post 474. And his concern, he's got a couple of concerns. One is, what's the plan for ADA boat slip access? So planning for boat slips that are the most ADA accessible and safe, and I would imagine that would mean close to the pier,
Right.
so that there's less of a distance and that the ramp is the right grade and all that. And then the other part of that was ADA access for a trailer, and like truck and trailer for people that bring in their own boats, because apparently he's got a whole group of disabled veterans that use boats out of, I know Pillar Point Harbor, I don't know about OPM, and there isn't any ADA facility for them, for their parking. And then the other point that he had is, well, I'll bring this up later, but just what are we doing to help our people with, our disabled visitors and veterans in a way of maybe providing some discounts for launching or something of that nature, like what, because I think it's great to have all these facilities brought up to ADA standard, and we have to do that. We've got to avoid litigation and provide a safe place for people with disabilities, but we also should do other things besides just that, to try to make the facility more accessible from a cost standpoint, and that's something that I think we need to look at. Also, we haven't talked about that today.
Absolutely, and the disability community is one of the fastest growing constituencies. There's currently 56 million persons with disabilities. By the time you're 65, there's more than 50% chance that you or someone else will have a disability. So it's in everyone's best interest to go a little above and beyond. And that's exactly, you know, those comments are what we need from you, as well as you, to formulate where those needs are and tie that into our plan. So I look forward to getting some of that information from you, as well as getting further kind of public meeting sessions.
Will there be another outreach?
There will. There'll
Okay.
be kind of one that focuses more on, well, just on
The specifics.
accessibility issues and what we're doing, and hearing those comments. You know, it's a unique district, so you get unique viewpoints, you know, different from cities and counties.
Commissioner Bernardo.
Oh, are you finished?
Yes,
Commissioner
I'm
Brennan?
done, thank you.
I just have one question. When we were redoing in my day job at the Port of Oakland, when we were redoing our website a year ago, one of the considerations was, again, ADA compliance. Are you going to examine website, for example, colorblind, hearing impaired for videos, hearing impaired caption, things like that? Are you going to look at the website too?
So yeah, one of what, in the beginning of the presentation, I talked a little bit about the self-evaluation process, and that folds in. There's 13 areas of Title II, based on the DOJ Technical Assistance Manual. It covers everything from communication, where we've created another web questionnaire for that. However, so we do cover that in a series of questionnaires, but we're not a web specialist, so we don't go, and you know, there's a certain amount of that we cover, but we do absolutely cover that because it's part of communication. We're also looking at other things like emergency management, purchasing, construction policies. Because the last thing you want to do is build something new and you go out there and it's not compliant. And that happens all the time.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
And through Debbie and our website manager, we've already made several updates. Debbie's handled that for us.
Great.
So we are listening to all the recommendations, and we've already made several updates.
From that, we develop a separate work plan that's based on policy and procedures.
Thank you. Thank you.
Commissioner Lorenz.
I have a couple questions. First, is there a list in your report of the organizations that you've reached out to get input? Like because I can think of a few, but if you've already...
No, we're not there yet, so
Okay.
I'd love to get that list, and then we can send out, reach out to them to get them involved.
Okay.
So that's part of the next step.
And for staff, is there do you have a way for us to know what you've been up to with respect to meeting some of these things? Because it's nice to hear that the organization's been doing this. Like,
Yeah.
I had no idea what you were doing with respect to the website, for example.
I've asked staff, our assistant harbor masters at Oyster Point and Phillip have been given a copy. I provided them a copy of the preliminary report. Again, this is just a draft copy, not a finished product, but we didn't want to just sit on it. So I provided both of the assistant harbor masters with that preliminary report and asked that they go down the entire report and identify those low-hanging fruit objects that we can quickly take care of just ourselves and mark them off. I've not yet gotten back any sort of a checkoff list at present. It's just too early in the game.
Okay. Yep.
Real quick, one last thing that you made me think of when you mentioned emergency. Could we have a little component on ADA evacuation in the event of like we're in the tsunami inundation zone, to address that?
That's a great input, and yes, we should expand our questionnaire to address that, and also provide some resources if there's other ones relating specifically to the evacuation of persons with disabilities in coastal areas.
Thank you.
That's a great idea as well. Thank you.
It sounds like we're at the end of item 10. I don't see any more discussion.
Maybe 9.
9, correct. Moving on to item 10, temporary trailer boat storage lot at Oyster Point Marina. Mr. Moran, so we need a staff report, and we have a recommendation for a motion.
All right, the motion is that the district not sole source a short or long-term ground lease to Drake Marine for the dry storage of trailered vessels. And additionally, that the dry storage of vessels be properly considered during the master planning of the east end of the marina and not before. Little background, the existing OPM, Oyster Point Marina trailer boat storage lot is located on property owned by the city of South San Francisco. The property is currently under district control in accordance with the joint powers agreement with the city. Due to a 2011 JPA amendment, the land parcels will be conveyed back to the city in August of this year. Drake Marine is currently subleasing the trailered boat storage lot, but has received notice from Oyster Point Development that the lot must be cleared by June. Therefore, all 250 trailer boats must be removed. The city has expressed no interest in allowing this land parcel to remain a trailer boat storage lot. Drake Marine was never a tenant of the district, and the district has no legal obligation to Drake Marine. It cannot be argued that the district is the cause of the trailer boat storage lot being removed. However, Drake Marine is requesting that the district consider allowing a new temporary trailered boat storage lot be built on a different land parcel, which will continue to be under the district's control after the land conveyance occurs. Even if the district decided to construct a temporary trailer lot storage, there is no legal justification to sole source operation management of that proposed lot to Drake Marine. In addition, because the current customers of the trailer boat storage lot must vacate in June, the time frame is too short for a trailered boat storage lot to be planned, approved, permitted, and constructed to allow for an uninterrupted transfer of trailered boats from the current lot to a proposed newly built lot. District staff sympathize with Drake Marine and the trailered boat storage customers. However, it is the city, the owner of the land, that has decided a trailer boat storage lot is not the highest and best use of this property. Therefore, staff must recommend the district not sole source a short or long-term ground lease to Drake Marine for dry storage of trailered vessels, and additionally, that the dry storage of vessels be properly considered during the master planning of the east end of the OPM Marina and not before.
Motion, I'd like somebody to make the motion and second the motion so we can
Can I
start
make
some
some-
discussion.
We need to have,
comments.
we need to have
Well,
public comment.
Just a minute, you're gonna have a motion and a second to
Second.
get something discussed. Then if you would let me finish, I was going to take public comment, then we'll have commissioner comment. Is that
That's
all right
not
with you?
how we normally do it. No, it's not okay
Okay.
with me.
And I think Robert, did you second it?
I did second it, actually.
All right,
Thank you. Discussion.
so we have a motion and a second on the floor to start discussion. Mr. Drake.
Hi, my name is Jim Drake from Drake Marine, and I've been dealing with this issue for quite a while, since 2011 actually, but my concern with the staff report that was written, and the reasons for not allowing this to happen, I guess what I'm trying to figure out, and I'm still very unclear on, is the agenda of the city and the district to make Oyster Point Marina just a park? Because if it is, then this staff report fits that agenda. It's crafted to continue that idea. Otherwise, if you want to service the community boaters and allow people with kayaks and small boats to use the facility that's there, it makes absolutely no sense. Under your alternative one that you're suggesting, that you're recommending that you vote on, you've got environmental issues associated with any boatyard or trailer storage, and it's one of the reasons why you don't want this. It's not a boatyard, and by putting boatyard in this, it's out of context and it's misleading. Okay, so there's no environmental really issues with parking boats on a gravel lot. The aesthetic concerns about green space, again, in this report, it talks about public outcry if you use this small space, literally less than an acre, for storage, again, to help the community keep storing their boats there. You're about to knock down every tree, every building, everything in 16 acres out there at the marina. All that's going to be turned back into green space. So you're increasing your green space by 15 acres, losing 1 acre for another service. Is minor, and it won't affect the trails. It won't affect the aesthetics of the place. It really. And again, the thing I need to stress that I keep reading in here is it's temporary. It's temporary, and nobody seems to get that, and it's very, very frustrating, because if you move into the next point, design, planning, permitting, construction time frame, I met with the city planners in downtown South San Francisco. There isn't a lot of planning needed. You can put down a gravel lot, put a fence around it with no permitting, anything. It's very simple, very easy. If you want to grade, if you want to put permanent structures, things like that, yes. Now you're talking about permits, you're talking about construction details, plans, all that. But according to the planner down there, we don't need any of that. We can make it happen very quickly. Okay? The time frame, pushing it back again, you can push it back forever. You can push it back for the next 10 years, but the community needs the service now. The difference is, and again, I think that's the part you're missing, you can still plan, you can still decide what you want to do with that east end in your plan, but right now we have a need. The plan we really don't need right now.
Okay, that's your time.
Okay. The other thing was, I just want to say the potential for the legal cost things, I don't know where that one came from, that's just ridiculous, but I suggest alternative number 2, at least do something, okay? At least make the decision to actually do something. To make a decision to take no action, to do nothing, helps no one, okay? Other than, again, it moves that agenda to make the marina a park.
Mr. Drake.
Thank you.
Commissioner comments, please.
I have a comment, if I may.
Mr. Lorenz.
Can we get the public comment so that we can
We just
factor
did
that?
Is that,
the public.
was
That's
that
the
it?
only comment?
That's
Is that the
correct.
only public comment?
Okay.
Okay. Okay, well, I've got a few comments. First, I'd like to point out that my understanding of the Harbor District and us as commissioners is that we serve the public, and we are a harbor district, so we are supporting and serve commercial and recreational services for the public. Second, we're not in the business of making money. It's not our charter, so whether moving boats from where they are now and giving them a temporary storage, if it's a cost issue, I think that's irrelevant. We're asked to do something on a temporary basis. I don't see why we're so recalcitrant with it. It's a boating community. We're serving a boating community. Why can't we do that? It makes no sense to me.
So Commissioner comments, Commissioner Bernardo?
I have a question actually to staff, and that is more of a policy question. So different public agencies sort of do this differently. What's our policy, remind me, on sole sourcing? When do we do that? When do we not do that? Are we not supposed to ever do that? Is there a threshold amount where we could do that? Tell me about sole sourcing.
First of all, there's certain kinds of things, construction type things that we have to go by state law unless there's an emergency. Steve will watch what I say very carefully, Steve and Miller, watch what I say very carefully. But there have been times, and the commission can, in other situations, approve a sole source if they feel like the phrase was the best interest of the district, or that it was expedient.
It's not exactly. Can I take a try at
Please.
this? Okay. Until the district paid off its DBW loan, the district was under express contractual requirements with the state as a condition of that loan to engage in considerable competitive procedures for leasing any property. Those rules and requirements went away once we paid off the DBW loan. The state laws that Glenn's describing that apply to public works construction don't apply to leasing of property. So I don't believe as a matter of statutory law, the district has any restrictions on how it decides to handle its leaseholds. In the aftermath of paying off the DBW, the district did not adopt a replacement policy, although it certainly would be, at a minimum, I would say, a best practice that you would want to maximize competition where you can. But the term sole source applies, from my legal perspective, to procurements and in particular construction projects and some purchases, but not so much to leasing the property.
Thank you. That answers my question.
I have some comments.
Commissioner Brennan.
First, I have a question, which is, who paid for the building that's going to be torn down that is currently Drake's Marine? That's a question for Mr. Drake.
Summit Marine, I believe.
So it's been
When
there.
it was originally built, it's a ground lease, and then originally the building and the facility was built by Summit Marine.
And that was while the Harbor District was responsible for that location?
I believe so, yeah.
Okay. So the building was built for, can we get some historical documents on how that happened with the district and who paid for the build out and how it was sourced and all that? Is that possible to get that information?
Yes.
Because I feel like we're missing the full picture here.
Well, it would be in the, I would imagine it would be anticipated in the original lease document, which has been assigned on a number of occasions, most recently to OPD.
Could we get that?
Yep.
Okay, great. Because what I'm concerned about is we are losing lease revenue. We get very little lease revenue as it is at Oyster Point Marina. We know that the yacht club only pays us about $300 a month. Is that right?
About that.
Yeah. I mean, our sources of revenue at Oyster Point are really not good. And I think everybody knows that. And we're losing most of the property that we used to be responsible for there. And we're losing our dry boat storage, which was a great service to the boating community. And there haven't been any provisions made by the city or the district. And I would have thought that the city and the district would work together in partnership on this to try to address this problem. But I haven't seen anybody do anything to address the emergency that's being created by the displacement of all these vessels. And it is an emergency because our district's mission is to serve the public in their recreational needs in San Mateo County and to serve the boating community in San Mateo County. And by displacing all of these vessels that need access and they need an affordable place for storage, I feel like we're not serving the community that our district represents. So I'm very concerned about what I feel is a lax approach to addressing what is a significant problem to the boating community, and there is a real shortage of storage space. And I feel like we're just basically telling Mr. Drake, go away. I mean, it's not his problem. I mean, sorry, it's not his fault that for years and years, decades, there's been no clarity about what the future of Oyster Point was going to be. And so he couldn't invest and make his business as great as maybe he wanted it to be because he didn't know what the future of that location was, because it was always so unsettled, because nobody knew whether the city was going to develop it this way or that way, and it's all been very tenuous. So now that we finally know what's going to, we have a pretty good picture now of what's going to happen with the development, and we've got this little piece of vacant land that's doing nothing, and we have an opportunity to actually make some lease revenue off this little patch of landfill, because that's what it is. It's landfill that's sinking. And, you know, if we could throw down some gravel and put up a temporary storage building or something to have a little office and put up a fence, I don't see the problem. I mean, we are a harbor district. We are supposed to be serving the boating community, and I don't know why we wouldn't do that. And if there was a long-term plan where we could do what Tom has suggested and have some fabulous stacked boat storage thing, maybe there would be a way to work with, you know, put out an RFP for such a thing while we're doing this temporary situation with a gravel lot, and we could do an RFP, and we could, you know, get some proposals for doing some sort of a stacked boat dry storage building with a little bit of a space for repair, because we need boat repair, or, you know, some marina, and also to sell some, maybe some boat parts or something, because I know West Marine has gone out of business all over the place. You know, it just seems like there's an opportunity here to serve the boating community, and I don't understand why we wouldn't want to be a little bit more creative in how we approach it. And it just feels like there's been a lot of pushback on the part of the staff, and I feel like we are not in alignment with our mission as a harbor district. Obviously, a harbor district and a city are always going to have two different missions, and they have their mission, and on the land that they're responsible for, they are doing, you know, their dream project, which is biotech, it's a new road, it's the ferry terminal, and it's a hotel. But on the little section that we have, which is tiny, you know, why can't we have boating facilities? For, you know, it's not, this isn't just about having toy boats in the water that look pretty for people at a biotech campus. This is about, you know, this is a real recreational thing that requires boats and equipment and repair and storage and boat launch ramps and access for human-powered vessels and human-powered vessel storage. None of these things have been talked about or considered, and we need to get on it. So that's where I'm coming from.
Can I ask Mr. Drake a question?
I actually have a comment.
Okay, hang on. Commissioner Lorenas?
So I have a question for Mr. Drake. So if you have a boat in the marina at Oyster Point, especially if it's a larger boat, you need services like buying oil for your motor, parts for your engine, repair services for the engine, and even with small boats, you need outboard repair. So if you disappear, where do folks go to get those services? Is there something at Oyster Cove, or do they have to go to San Francisco?
You would have to go to San Francisco or the East Bay. It would be the closest. San Francisco would be the closest, but south of us, there's a small Belmont boat service down in Belmont, but they just do small boat stuff. They don't travel or anything like that. So there's nothing in our area. We service basically the whole peninsula and also Half Moon Bay. But if we leave, then there's nothing. So there's no other mobile services. There's a few guys who kind of do it on their own thing, kind of out of their cars or anything, but nothing the size of what we do. So
And then I have another question, I don't know if it's for you or for staff. So if you leave, who's gonna run the fuel dock? Which presumably with the fuel dock, you'll be able to buy at least some amenities for the boats. Is there a plan for that?
Yeah, that's kind of hanging in space, I guess, right now. In fact, I have a meeting tomorrow, I guess, with OPD about the fuel dock, but
Okay,
we don't know.
It's
okay,
in discussion.
Right.
yeah,
So I have
go ahead.
Commissioner Crawley.
Thank you. So thank you, Mr. Drake, for your comments. So my comments were actually directed to staff because as I read the report, I also looked at option 2 and found the word temporary. So, and it says that the alternative could be for these trailer boat owners to pay $100 a month and forget about their neglected boats, on page 5 and 6. So what is the I mean, I don't vote that much. So, but what is the likelihood of something like that happening? 1, and 2. Will tonight vote? Let's say that we vote for option 1. Does that preclude us from working with South San Francisco to work through an arrangement where we can kind of support the boating community to fulfill that part of our mission? I mean, what does do nothing mean? An alternative 1, or take no action. Does that preclude us from working through the different arrangements where we can support our mission also and also work with what they want?
Well, I would say that none of the alternatives preclude the Harbor Commission from directing staff to do anything. And I did not ever, even writing this, did not ever intend to intentionally sway the commission one way or another, just simply tried to present the facts as I know them, and there are some obviously unfortunate realities. There's a time factor, that we
Right.
have to be concerned with, and
And in June 2017, are we talking about the end of June? Which part of June?
Mr. Drake, I think, can tell
And that-
when
that
OPD
may
is
be in
given
the letter.
the
I'm
deadline,
sorry if
yeah.
I can't remember if it's in here.
End of June is their actual move-out date
Okay.
for the dry boat store.
I heard Harbor District dry boat storage, and to my knowledge, the Harbor District doesn't have dry boat storage over there, is that correct?
That's correct.
And Mr. Drake does have a mobile service, because I know he'll come over to Pillar Point Harbor to service vessels, and it's up to him whether he continues to choose his mobile service on repairing boats anywhere in the Bay Area.
How many boats did you think that you could fit in this space with a gravel lot?
Wow, we'd like to see 75 to 100. It depends on how it pencils out with the cost of the land lease and that sort of thing. So we haven't got to that point, but we figure we could get upwards of 100. So, and I'd like to see it in that neighborhood. That doesn't include kayaks, dragger boats, small sailing boats, things like that. I mean, I'm just talking about trailer tower boats, but we can fit the other smaller stuff in other areas.
Well, with all the changes happening or planned for happening at Oyster Point and the reduction in the district's responsibilities there on land, it seems to me that we need a plan for what we're going to do about dry boat storage and also about human-powered vessels. I'm looking at you, John, because I know your operations. And it seems to me that given the configuration of the space that we're left with, there isn't really anywhere else for this to go except right here. I would really like to, and I know that there is a very serious time situation here because there needs to be a transition. I'd like to see a plan put together And it seems like the staff could work with Mr. Drake to come up with a plan for what to do to accommodate some dry boat storage. I know that we're not, how many boats are there now, right? Like,
There's 250 right now.
so that's like cutting it in half or more. But I think that in addition to the standard dry boat storage, I'm also very concerned because we've also heard from the Dragon Boat folks and other boaters who may want to use human-powered vessels that may want storage as well. So like all of that could be kind of figured into one plan. And the idea that we would be able to get some lease revenue when we're not really getting any right now, except for our slip fees, which I think we're at about 79% occupancy, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. I just see that as money coming in that we don't have right now and fulfilling our mission as a harbor district to you know, assist the boating community. I see that as a win-win. How hard would it be, because nothing in this staff report really gives us anything to work with. You know, there's nothing in here like, well, if we did that, this is how long it would take, this is what it would cost, you know, the cost burden would be on the leasee. You know, there's no plan here for how we might explore that option. It's just sort of a lot of no, 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 but not like, hey, let's just see how could we do it and how it would all work out.
Again, in option, or alternative 3, it does broadly discuss the potential of the board direction for us to work with Drake Marine and to develop plans. Now this, again, the unfortunate reality is, unlike unfortunately what Mr. Drake said, there is substantial planning to a trailer boat storage lot. You've got to plan the entry, the parking, the safe exit for whatever size vessels you're going to plan for to be trailered. And in addition, it's not as easy as one might think to get the permitting in order to remove an entire green space and large trees and put up a fence alongside of a bay trail. I would say that is not very easy. That said, I've already reached out to the city of South San Francisco and asked for a rough time frame. However, as I stated in the staff report, they have yet to get back with me. But there is substantial permitting going to be required, planning and permitting. I would say we'd have to hire a consultant to do this planning, engineering, design for a valid trailer vessel operation. In addition, the environmental concerns are there. We are already talking, again, in staff's opinion, before the planning, permitting, and construction could occur, we would be pushed past June, in staff's opinion. Therefore, all of these boats that the city of South San Francisco are displacing would have to find another home. They would then have to return once we are done with our construction.
So can I ask a quick question? Who came up with the June deadline?
And
And can that be moved out?
again, the district did not come up with any dates
Well, it
for
says
eviction.
OPD.
Oh.
OPD came up with the June.
OPD is the landlord,
Right.
and,
No, OPD's the
I'm
the
sorry.
lessee.
I'm sorry.
South San Francisco is the landlord, right? Or we're the,
landlord. OPD is our tenant. OPD has a sublease with Drake Marine.
okay.
And
So
so OPD has terminated the sublease or directed OPD to vacate, and directed Drake Marine to vacate the property by June 30th. We believe, but we're not a part of that discussion because we don't have a relationship with Great Marine. We just have a relationship with OPZ.
So another alternative would be to offer all those people storage in the harbor under alternative one and increase our revenue. Another alternative would be for the harbor district alone to take over the dry boat storage and not have to take a very small percentage versus dealing with somebody and asking for a percentage back.
Which is addressed in alternative 2.
Can you explain that?
Yeah, that was your second
That's,
clarity.
I think what Commissioner Toots was saying was that the district could eventually develop and operate a temporary trailer boat storage as easily as leasing it out for a portion of the proceeds.
Wouldn't we make more money though if we leased it out?
No, it would make less.
I like your first
I think from a revenue perspective, once we
That's,
we would want to pencil that out from a revenue perspective, dry boat
so
storage
take
is
no
not a high
action,
maintenance
also on the slip.
project. And
So,
we
could-
could-
So could we do that? Because we need to make a decision because the boats need to go somewhere. And the thing about, I understand that some of the boats might be able to go into slips, but there are boats that are small that, I mean, if I had a small boat, I wouldn't want to have a slip. I would want to have dry boat storage, and that's why you have a small boat, because a small boat can be on a trailer, and that's the whole point. If you wanted to have a boat in the water, you would have a large boat. So I get why people have small boats and they want to have them on trailers, and even some people have large boats on trailers, but it just seems to me like this is not, the staff report doesn't give us much to work with here, so I'm having a hard time figuring out where we could go with this. I think long-term, a stack boat facility with an RFP sounds like a really great idea, because then we could fit more boats in it. And whether it's the district's facility or somebody else's facility, I guess we have to pencil it out and see what makes sense.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, we have displacement of a bunch of vessels that use the launch at Oyster Point. And, for many reasons, it makes sense to keep those vessels close to the launch ramp so people aren't driving so much all over the roads. And I mean, you could come up with a million reasons why it makes sense to keep the vessels near the launch ramp versus spread out all over the place. So I get that. Isn't there something we could do to work with the city to maybe buy a month while we?
That's why I brought up the time.
I think that's a good suggestion. I mean, can't we work together?
Negotiate.
Because they're the ones displacing all of these boats, and they need to have a plan for how to help the people that they're displacing. You can't just kick out a bunch of renters without, coming up with a plan for what to do. It just doesn't seem fair to me. And it's also lower income people who are being impacted. So I really think we need to work more constructively with the city to kind of come up with a holistic plan that's going to get us through temporarily until we can come up with a better long-term plan. And if this place is going to stay a viable marina, then we need to have marina-related services, and dry boat storage has historically always been one of the benefits of Oyster Point as far as the boat community goes, or the marine.
If
I
I
have
could
a
address-
quick,
Okay, sorry, go ahead.
I'm just, because Tom made a suggestion about the harbor thing, and I don't have the experience, so I'd love to hear that idea. I know it's under alternative one, but can you expound on that idea just a little
Well,
bit so I can?
without having to sole source anything, number one, if we wanted storage, we could do storage ourselves. Number two, we offer storage to who's ever got a boat there, and that raises our direct revenues because we get a very, very, very small amount from the trailer boat storage under some sublease reimbursement plans. So there are no direct leases for the dry boat storage with Pillar Point Harbor. We have nothing in that arena right now. We're not in that business. So another thing would be to look at our strategic plan And part of our Oyster Point strategic plan does not say the Harbor District will set up dry boat storage. If we did dry stacked storage, we're gonna have a 40,000 square foot facility allegedly in the future. Perhaps a 2 or 3 story project there, similar to what either never got into effect or isn't currently being used. It sounds to me that if we don't take this motion of do nothing, then we're not gonna agree on this right now. So we're gonna have to table this and bring it back. Mr. Moran has already stated that we've asked the city, if we take no action,
Well, you have a
There's
motion
a
and a
motion,
second, so
right.
Yeah.
you'll need to take some action on that
Unless I
motion.
table it. 'Cause I
Well,
don't have a
well-
motion.
Well, you could withdraw the motion.
But I'm not, anyway, I want to hear what Tom has to say because I value his experience and his opinion.
basically, that's it. We offer people slips.
If I could speak to a little bit of that, if it is the will of the commission that there be dry boat storage, I think first thing is, at this point, there's a June 30 deadline. It seems unlikely that anything could be developed by that deadline. So there are 2 options. One is everybody's got to go away and then come back, or a negotiation with OPD, to get any sort of short-term extension possible. Secondly, Mr. Drake mentioned 250 votes, but we know from what Mr. Drake has said, 50% haven't moved in 20 years, 25% in 3 to 5. So we've probably got 75 active voters, which speaks to this more facility. And then the third thing would be that permitting is going to be complicated greatly if the project moves from simply a gravel fenced lot to a facility with a building that needs utilities and so on and so forth. It's a whole different thing, and I think Mr. Drake alluded to that. And then the last thing I would say is that if this is to be a temporary storage while we plan the future of Oyster Point and our role there, then I would recommend that, and if this is the will of the commission, that you given considerations for the motion on the floor, etc., that we look at us developing that dry boat storage only as a temporary service. Then we've got complete control over it and can adjust term and other conditions as we go forward.
So based on everything I'm hearing as the least experienced person, it sounds like option 1 gives us the most flexibility, but if we were to look at the date, because June is just so, I mean, would option 1 preclude us from negotiating a longer date to help out Mr. Drake and the current boats, the boat owners?
You
I
could-
mean,
let me
I
say-
don't know.
Let me just say
I'm
real
not-
quick
I'm
that,
just,
that originally, in the originals diagrams and drawings with the OPD, City of South San Francisco agreement, the original drawings showed a temporary trailer
Yeah.
storage area.
Yeah.
The City of South San Francisco and OPD have already determined that the trailer storage in that area, which is the logical area to have temporary storage, before a hotel, for instance, might be built there. That is the logical place to have it. They have determined that it is not the highest and best use for that property. So we can go back to them, of course, at board direction, we can go back to them. But again, I'm not saying we're spinning our wheels, I'm saying the clock is moving.
it's ticking, that's
Yes.
my problem.
Therefore, we are again, the reality, unfortunate reality of this is that it is most likely that all of these trailer boats will have to find another home and then come back. Unless OPD and City of South San Francisco wish to allow them to stay where they're at or push the project back.
Right. And let's just say that, we know that things are moving fast on OPD, South City side. We are in some discussions with, OPD regarding the fuel dock. I think it might be, given any project that might need to be permitted, I'm not sure that we could get enough time, pretty much regardless, because we know that they're looking at doing the conveyance and starting construction in August.
August, right.
Right, so,
So what's the
so
difference for another
and
2
if we-
months
and if we
extension?
recognize that of the 250 boats, 175 are going away anyway, I would suggest that really, if this is in the will of the board, that you, look at alternative number 2, we're gonna deal with the motion that's on the floor, and direct us to start that process, and then with a view to, I would recommend us operating it.
So what's
But the motion
considered
that's on the floor,
temporary,
and if I
Steve?
could just clarify, Commissioner Chantarelli, sorry to interrupt, but the motion that's on the floor does not preclude you from adopting that motion.
No, I
And
know.
then directing staff to investigate options for a district-operated, dry boat storage
So-
lot.
Okay, so for me, it is the time issue. So if you, let's say, okay, like, let's say we adopt alternative number 2. What is considered temporary?
That is why I would recommend that we be the
Right,
operators
so
of any
what would we
facility.
consider temporary, do you think?
We pass the motion and then we direct staff to pursue alternative 2.
Right, but I'm actually okay with 1 if it gives us the most flexibility, unless I understand what I don't know, because I have no experience in this area like Ed and Tom. So what is considered temporary?
Well,
So I'm
temporary-
kind of coming from this as a newbie, quite frankly.
If we recognize that we have a 2011 agreement between us and the city that allows for the development of 40,000 square feet of harbor-related commercial uses, and that we have a grant agreement with DBW on the ramp and the parking area that runs out, and that we have a maintenance facility, and that we want to look at the whole thing, I mean, I think certainly as we get through the discussions that we're currently having, both short-term and long-term with South City, we should be starting a planning process for the east end of the spit. I would like to see that happening soon.
Right, but you could do that with alternative number 1,
If
right? You could do it
If
with
the motion passes, the motion that's on the floor passes, that does not preclude the board from additionally directing staff to investigate and start conversations with the city about permitting a dry boat storage lot for operation by the district. And we could, if we were clear that this was subject to any future master planning process, we could start that process, virtually immediately.
I just am concerned that, the city isn't going to be as willing to work with us as I feel like they should be. I'm very concerned about that. I don't know that they really see us being at Oyster Point long-term. I think that's the feedback I'm getting. And we are talking about a temporary situation right now that maybe could become permanent if we build a building that stacks boats. But I'm not sure I trust that well, let me put it this way. I would like to be sure that we are using all available options to impress upon the city how important it is that you can't just displace the boating community and throw them all out to the wind with no plan for mitigating that. There's got to be some mitigating plan and some transitional planning. And this, to me, sends a message that this is the way this whole project might run, because they haven't done anything to really plan for our access to our own, facility. I shouldn't say own because we don't own anything there, but we haven't been provided with a plan for access to the docks, since that land is going to be their land that connects up to the docks. We haven't been, there's very little transitional planning happening, as far as I can tell, because they haven't come to us with the meeting that we were supposed to get that was going to explain to everybody what the transition was going to look like, and the public outreach and the, you know, drawings and what have you. None of that has happened. There's been zero outreach to the public from them. The only people they've met with is the board of the yacht club. That's not public outreach. So, you know, I'm just concerned. I think this needs to come up in a special meeting of both boards. This should be one of many items that we need to talk about face to face with the two boards, and we need to work through the transitional planning that's got to happen related to this development project. And the communication is just poor right now. It's not good, and that's been reflected in a number of ways. And, you know, the timing of this is sensitive, and here we are, you know, going through this meeting with no concrete real options, because I hear what you're saying about alternative two, but it all sounds very tenuous, and the city could just say, well, we don't feel the boaters' pain, and that's not our mission because we're not a harbor district, so the heck with them, you know, and this could just go nowhere, and that's what I'm afraid of. You know, I'm afraid that they're not, because they don't have the same mission that we have, the missions are in conflict with each other. We're not going to be able to negotiate with them unless we get everybody together and everybody realizes there is an issue here. We do need to make some mitigating, you know, take some mitigating steps to address the issue and come up with some sort of resolution that may not be perfect for everyone, but somehow is going to be helpful to the boaters. So
I have a question, kind of
Well,
piggy-
passing the motion does not prevent us from directing alternative 1 and 2 simultaneously, offering people slips, and we already have paperwork into the city, so alternative 2 is already underway. Pass the motion and recommend to staff
What are the
alternative 1 and 2
I'm
is what I would recommend.
completely confused. I need much
So-
better
so
explanation
I
from
have a-
staff.
I have a question regarding the actual wording of the motion, which is to not sole source a short or long-term ground lease. So what was it that made y'all come up with that conclusion not to sole source, that led to this recommendation for this particular motion?
If I may, as I've said in the past, there are,
I'm sorry if I'm
There-
making you repeat things.
no, but there are unfortunate realities that we're dealing with here. For the board to direct staff to somehow magically move forward very quickly with making this 40,000 square foot area a trailer boat storage, I would say is simply not possible. In fact, we're not even taking into consideration another aspect that I touched upon, which is Mr. Drake currently has 250 customers. If we were to snap our fingers and or somehow have a temporary boat storage area for 75 boats in that tiny area, which I'm not even certain that could be planned properly and safely, but if it was, how do we choose which 75 boats get to go in there? So you're going to end up with a lot of very unhappy persons. The process, as I've had to go through in my past,
Whoa,
to move.
whoa.
Yes.
You're making assumptions, but Mr. Drake ought to explain to us how he would pare down the number of boats.
That's a non-issue in my book. To pick which 75 go in there, it's first come, first served. You gotta be registered, you gotta be legal, you gotta have insurance, you gotta have that. That'll take care of it right there. I have no problem with saying you're out, you're in, this and that. And I don't think it's a legal issue either, because if they're not insured, if they're not registered, if they're not being used, if it's not a navigable craft with inflated tires, it's not coming in. It's that simple. It's really, that's kind of a non-issue.
I was gonna say, I always wished it was that simple, as I've had to move people from one area in a marina to another, and as we've downsized with bigger berths but fewer berths, even those persons that have what I would consider a vessel that's challenged, even those persons will put air in their tires and say, my boat's just as good as his. And why are you discriminating against me? I'm a veteran, I'm this, I'm that. And it is not as easy as us sitting here tonight saying we're going to pare down from 250 boats to 75 boats. I would not want to be involved in that.
Well, that's why it might make more sense to let Mr. Drake deal with that. And then we don't have to. All we have to do is lease him a gravel lot, and then it's his problem. That's what he's proposing. I think that sounds like a fine plan, and as long as it's a short-term agreement and we're not stuck in it, you know, then we can come up with a better plan later. But right now, all these boats need a place to go. And, you know, it's an unfortunate situation that was really created by the city, but we're the harbor district.
I would agree there as well. And obviously, we're still going to be in control of that eastern area. And for the board to make the decision to flatten the green space and remove trees and put up a chain link fence around a now graveled flat area for boats on trailers is going to be a challenge in the staff's opinion.
With the city or with, because I know the coast,
With your constituency.
what constituency?
Anybody that doesn't have a trailered boat but uses that area to walk their dogs in.
Last time I was at Oyster Point, I didn't see anybody using that area. It's kind of no man's land there.
I'm gonna call for the question.
Yeah, I don't, so, can we get a, I know that we could discuss this on into the night, and I don't think we're gonna get anywhere, any further. So I would like to call for the question, get a roll call vote on, passing the motion, and then whether the commission chooses to pursue alternative 1 or 2.
Or 100.
Yeah.
No, that's not the see, that's where it's kind of weird. That is not the
We don't even know what the
motion.
motion is.
The motion-
The motion that I made was that the district not sole source a short or long-term ground lease to Drake Marine for the dry storage of trailered vessels, and additionally that the dry storage of vessels be properly considered during the master planning of the east end of the marina and not before. But then again, and so I'm looking at the back, which of the last page, which says that the district staff recommends the board choose alternative number 1, that the board take no action. That's not the motion. The motion is not to do a sole source, right? And, I mean, that's, so that's the right, but that's not the same thing as choosing alternative 1. So I'm willing to go with Tom's suggestion and look at the direction after we vote on this motion.
Well, I just want to say for the record that I can't vote for the motion as stated because I don't see that there's any good reason why, given this emergency situation with the displacement of hundreds of vessels, 150 or whatever we'd end up with, salvaging a spot for, you know, to me, this rises to the level of displacement. It's an emergency. I don't have a problem with sole sourcing, given the fact that Mr. Drake has been a very good tenant. I've never received a single complaint. The entire time I have been serving this district as a commissioner, not one person has ever come to me and complained about what services Mr. Drake was providing as being insufficient or there being any problems whatsoever. I've never had any environmental complaints. I've had no complaints at all. So I don't have a problem with sole sourcing this because I think he's been doing a good job. I have no reason to think otherwise. So I can't.
Well, I've called for the question, so.
Can I make one more point?
Yeah.
I'll be quick. One thing we haven't mentioned is that it took until now to get this on our agenda and discussed. I don't know, when was it that you reached out to staff? Was it
How many months ago?
Was it yesterday or was it several months ago? Because we're saying there's a time crunch.
It actually started in 2011 when SKS first came out with the plan, and there was no no place for dry boat storage or marine services, that sort of thing. So it actually started back then, but just recently, it's been a few months ago, we tried to get on last month's agenda and the one before that, but I didn't even know how to do it right or whatever, so.
Right, so,
It's been a while.
It's not like this is a surprise. We knew this was coming.
right.
Can we get a roll call, please?
Can I, I'm clear on what the.
So am
The
I.
motion is right that the district not sole source a short or long-term ground lease to Drake Marine for the dry storage of trailered vessels, and additionally, that the dry storage of vessels be properly considered during the master planning of the east end of the marina and not before.
Is there an alternative?
No,
No,
that's the motion.
And there, so I made the
Stop,
motion, and
stop,
Robert
stop,
seconded.
stop.
Okay. Commissioner Bernardo?
Aye.
Commissioner Chancarelli?
Aye.
Commissioner Mathush?
Aye.
Commissioner Lorenz?
No.
Commissioner Brennan?
No.
Okay, so
Do you wish to direct staff to pursue alternative 1, 2, or both? Or to just wait for
Well, there's
the,
an
actually,
alternative
we've already
3.
said it's long-term.
there's
master
also an
plan.
alternative 3. So
Well,
do we want to choose how we want to make, to direct staff or?
Well, right now, it says we do it during the master planning,
Right,
and that's not going on now.
okay.
So moving on to.
I move that we make a decision to direct staff to negotiate with Drake Marine with the intent to enter into a lease agreement in which Drake Marine pays for all planning, design, engineering, permitting, and construction of a district-approved temporary trailered boat storage lot after receiving a proposal from Drake Marine, including proposed lease terms and lease timeframe. Staff would return to the board with approval or rejection. So I move for alternative 3. Can I get a second?
3 or 2?
This is
Three.
3.
Oh, I'm,
Could I ask a question to clarify, please? How is it that that is not directly in contradiction to what the board just voted on?
It's different because that was about sole sourcing.
The board just voted that the district not enter into sole source, enter into a shorter, long-term lease. but
This
that
says, this says bring it back for approval or rejection. It doesn't say that we're doing it.
well, but it also says that the dry storage of vessels would be properly considered during the master planning. So
Right
as
now we
John
have,
said, that
The idea of
there's
this
no-
motion is to bring something back to the board
Bring it-
for a later date, is that the idea?
Bring it back to the board more fully developed so that we can make a decision on it, so that we actually have a plan from Mr. Drake in front of us for how we would do this. And then we can make a decision at that point. We could decide any number of things. We could decide that we want to go out for RFP. We could decide that the district wants to do it, and maybe the staff would have had more time to look at how we would do it ourselves. Consult with, whoever we have to get approvals from in the planning and building department. We would have had more time to
But
fully
the-
vet it.
The motion that you made, though, Commissioner Brennan, was to direct staff to negotiate with Drake Marine. I couldn't write fast enough. Maybe more properly, your motion should be to more closely echo alternative 2.
Yeah, I would like to get, because I think Mr. Drake has some things that like John pointed out, we're gonna be in trouble if we can't get rid of all those boats. But Mr. Drake can get rid of all those boats. So I see him having an advantage to making this happen quickly that we don't have.
The harbor district does not have any boats. We don't have any dry storage, and we don't have a relationship with any dry boats. So, right
We
now.
do have a relationship because these are the boats that use our facility. That is a relationship. That's a very important relationship. And we're,
Perhaps you'd like to bring it back as an item for a different meeting.
That's what this
As pointed
is-
out by council, that this directly contradicts what we just voted on and approved.
Well, I didn't state that, I just asked how it was that it was not. And I think the answer was that the Commissioner Brennan's motion, if I understood correctly, was that we're not entering into a lease with Drake's Marine, but that she's asking for this item to be brought back with, I'm not exactly sure,
With a
but that
plan.
some proposal for a plan for some future development, but that may or may not involve Drake Marine, but that is.
And I'm
just
happy
different.
to consider an amendment to my motion if somebody has an idea for including, because this, my motion was strictly alternative 3, but if we wanted to incorporate part of alternative 2 in, I don't have a problem with that if anybody has a suggestion, so that we're looking at a comprehensive batch of alternatives, so that we're seeing, okay, here's if the district did it, here's if
Yeah.
Mr. Drake did it, you know, what's our other option?
Right, and the RP, if I may make a suggestion, alternative 2,
Yeah,
direct district staff to engage a consultant for planning, design, engineering, and permitting in order to determine construction cost, timeframe, and feasibility of constructing a temporary trailer boat storage lot to be managed by the district, Drake Marine, or management offered for public request for proposals.
that sounds like a good solution.
Yeah, I would go for
So are you seconding that
Yep.
motion? Do we need to restate it? Because that's kind of confusing.
Well, okay, so does that tie our hands for vis-a-vis this other part of the motion that just passed, which is to properly consider all of the dry storage vessel issues during the master planning, so that this gives us less flexibility?
I don't think
I'm
so.
asking Steve McGraw a question.
I think the difference between the motion that passed and the proposed motion is the inclusion in the proposed motion of the word temporary and the absence of that word from the motion that is passed.
Right, but
So-
master
so-
planning could include, master planning is a very broad term, so
Yes.
that's the reason I voted for this.
I understand, and one would like to think that the master planning would
Deal with
be
temporary
a
issue.
longer term issue, but that the second motion could incorporate a short-term usage while the master planning process is going forward.
And a
Yep.
master plan might include like a permanent solution, like the
Yes.
stacked
agree.
boat storage facility, which is probably where we want to head eventually, but this would be an interim
Yeah.
sort of make
Do we-
do.
Yeah, so I understand, do we need a motion at all, or can we just direct
Direct
staff to
staff.
look at this?
I think we do
Could be.
need a motion. I think we do need a motion, otherwise this alternative doesn't really, in my opinion, pair up well with the motion that was passed. And I think we need to send a message to the public that we are committed to trying to find a solution to this displacement problem that we didn't create, if that makes sense. I mean, we honestly did not create the problem, and, you know, I wish that the city was working with us, and maybe they will, to try to resolve this. Maybe they'll help us with the permitting process so that we can expedite a temporary solution and eventually have a really good long-term solution.
that. So the motion is,
So, you want to restate the motion, because you,
It's directly out of alternative number 2, with the addition of the words Drake Marine.
just adding Drake Marine.
Directs district staff to engage a consultant for planning, design, engineering, and permitting in order to determine construction costs, timeframe, and feasibility of constructing a temporary trailer boat storage lot to be managed by the district, Drake Marine, or management offered for public request for proposal.
So right after district,
Other-
then it's Drake Marine, and then it's management offered, right? Is that how, because I'm trying to help Debbie.
Right.
Yeah, I'm looking at this.
So is there again, the question came up earlier about procurement rules. The district does have procurement rules regarding the engagement of consultants. Is there a dollar value you are authorizing this contract? Are you directing the general manager to
It's
undergo
within
some
your-
competitive process to procure this? What is the,
This would be within your spending limit.
well, if that's,
No,
that's,
it's
I guess my question is that maybe what should be
25,000, right?
clarified?
If you don't direct otherwise, it must be within.
Which is what?
25,000.
And it must be under the
Right.
spending, the general manager spending limit. Can we add that to the motion? Within spending
Well, that's not
limit.
necessary,
We
because
can-
it would do that anyway.
Yes.
Okay, so we don't need to add that.
We can't go over spending
Right.
authority unless you.
And we will adjust the scope as necessary to fit that. We may not develop construction documents within that budget.
Okay,
Since we were directing this almost sole source, if we paid the 25,000 and if Mr. Drake was a successful bidder, would we then recoup our costs from Mr. Drake's
I think
new
that's a-
operation?
That's an excellent point to
Excellent
consider when we
point,
get to
Rob.
that stage.
Okay, that's a good point. Did we get a second? Because I don't remember.
I second
You
it.
second, okay, I couldn't
All right,
remember,
so the
sorry.
second motion is on the floor, made by Commissioner Brennan.
Does anybody
seconded
have
by
any questions?
Commissioner Lorenz.
Any questions?
Am I the only one that thinks Debbie should read that?
No,
Well,
I
I was
think that's
just
a
gonna ask
great
if we're adding the
idea.
additional line that says, after all costs of project overall feasibility are determined,
Right.
staff
Well,
will
well,
return
that-
to the board for direction.
Yeah, but that doesn't need to be part of the motion, that is,
Okay.
I think, implied. The motion stops at the word request for proposal.
So should we reread it one last time?
Let's be clear,
Do you,
from the beginning.
okay.
Right.
Let's
right.
let Debbie
Okay,
do
this is
it.
Alternative 2, board decision to direct district staff to engage a consultant for planning, design, engineering, and permitting in order to determine construction costs, timeframe, and feasibility of constructing a temporary trailer boat storage lot to be managed by the district, Drake Marine, or management offered for public request for proposal. Okay, Commissioner Bernardo?
No.
Commissioner Brennan?
Yes.
Commissioner Tranquilli?
No.
Commissioner Lorenz?
Yes.
Commissioner Mateusz?
No. Moving on to item 11, rates and fees. Recommendation, approve adjustment of the rates and fees. And notice the public hearing for adoption. So at this point, may we have a staff report prior to taking public comment?
Thank you, Mr. President. First, a little housekeeping. I want to call your attention to a new motion that Debbie is handing out. We want to be very clear that the action you're taking is not approving rates and fees tonight, but recommending to staff approving a proposal which staff will then circulate notice to the public and allow them to comment on when you have a public hearing to discuss rates and fees on June 21st. Also, when you make that motion, to remind that staff has asked you to provide additional direction regarding whether or not to adjust the commercial discount so as to mitigate any of the impact of rate and fee increases on the commercial boating community. On your screen, and there's also a handout for one correction. On your screen is a change to the crab pot, and we should correctly call it crab pot staging, not storage deposit, which is in the last several iterations of this, I made the error of repeatedly stating that it was to happen after the close of season, because thinking it through, this is a staging. They keep their pots there until they drop them in the water. So the clock begins at the beginning of the season. So where it, as in your packet, it said starting at the close of the statement of the season, this begins at the start of the season. And also, as shown on this recent track change page, there's a statement about what happens at the end of the statement. About 30 days after the end of the season, they may pay $500. That will never happen earlier than January 15th and never past July 15th. And if they clear their area, they'll get $300 back. So that's one of the changes. That's just specifically a couple of those items that were not have been corrected since your packet. This is the 5th time that rates and fees have been before you since I've been at the district. We have not increased rates and fees since August of 2014. What we have done is originally staff, particularly myself, has wanted to correct a lot of issues through rates and fees. And over time, we've eliminated many of those suggestions because what we were presenting to the commission and to the public, we were repeatedly reminded at the discussion that we were trying to do too much too fast. So we keep simplifying it in every iteration. What we've done here is suggest merely that beginning on July 1st, which would actually be August 1st for existing tenants, that there be an across-the-board increase of 3%, which was this annual CPI increase, you know, the San Francisco Bay Area urban consumers, for the year 2016. That's the primary increase that's pretty much across the board in Exhibit A. You have complete Exhibit A in your packet. I also have it on the presentation if there's specific questions so that the public can view that as well, or that you can see it larger. We also have asked that the commission, when you adopt rates and fees in June, the proposal is that you permit that same standard, that annual CPI, to be reflected every July 1st. So that, in other words, CPI does not have to come before the commission every year. It would only come before the commission if we were not going to. I think those are the most important points about this. We've been through this a few times. I'm ready to answer any questions. I have the whole track change schedule in your packet. You have our ordinance. There's a comparison rate of rates and fees. I think also an additional handout on that. The track change version and the clean version of the proposal. And again, just to repeat, this is not adopting these rates and fees. These are the rates and fees that we will post and circulate for public comment on June 21st. But certainly, if there are things in here you don't want, or additional things you do want, we'd like the opportunity to make those changes and share that with the public before the public hearing as well. Oh, I was going to just throw it open and answer questions about the charter, or do you want me to run whatever is the commission's present? We can take a break. Whatever's the
Take
commission's.
like a 5-minute break.
Whatever's the commission's.
All right, we'll take a 4-minute break. Four, not 5, please.
You're a tough negotiator.
Can we call our meeting back to order? Mr. Lazoff, did you wish to go through any figures, or?
However, you know, what will happen is that with whatever changes you suggest, these two tables, because I think the track change is helpful, will be available to the public to review and comment to you at the public hearing on June 21st. If there are changes to this that before the public has a chance to comment that you'd like to make, this is a good time to hear it. Fortunately, there's a couple of months here, so because that's the time to work on a few things.
Okay, well, we do have some public comment, if that's all right. I know. So is Diana Laxon still here?
Basically, I just wanted to be sure I understood what you said about this 500, which John has confirmed about this $500 for using staging in the parking lot. The way it is now, as you all know, it's $300 and you get it back if you clean up your space, which we totally support. But you're going to charge $500 and keep $200. I mean, I personally sweep our space.
And
I mean,
our neighbor's space also.
Yeah, we sweep everything, we make it spotless, and we go in and tell them it's spotless. So no problem keeping our money if we don't clean it up. But to charge us for it, it's my understanding this it was built originally with funding as a commercial operation to help the commercial fishermen. And in my opinion, I think this is doing damage to them. You know, they were all hurt very badly because of the 4-month delay last year. I think a lot of people may still be recovering from that. Some people we've talked to, and then slam them again. To my opinion, I think that doesn't feel right to me.
During the crab season, I'm always tapped out. So just coming up with an extra $500 cash right then is not a good time for me. And then doing that, knowing I'm not even going to get it all back, even if I'm a real good citizen in the harbor, which is pushing my buttons the wrong way. I vote no for not giving all the money back if they clean up their space. Yeah, I want good citizens rewarded, not
And it's already,
put down more and more and more. I'm one of the smaller guys in the harbor. I fish as hard or harder than anybody in the harbor.
and it's still my understanding, if you have pallets, used pallets, you do lose your $300, so,
Yeah.
There's
I don't
still
use
that.
pallets.
yeah, we don't use, we do clean. So, anyway, thank you.
All right, William Smith.
Good evening, Mr. President and Harbor Commissioners. My name is Captain William Smith. I own CPFD vessel Riptide in the harbor. I've been working out of this harbor for over 35 years and have owned the vessel Riptide for 20 years, working exclusively at Float Park Harbor. We've had to deal with a winter of very bad weather, which has cut into our ability to generate income. The weather has also affected our ability to do necessary repair work. For example, today I was painting my decks. One of the first few days we've actually had to be able to do some nice, pretty work on the boat. I am opposed to raising the berth fees for reasons that we're coming off of a very difficult year for the fishing industry. With the last salmon season on the edge of disaster and this upcoming season facing the same or worse conditions due to the drought years, we're struggling to stay afloat. As to the way we pay our berthing fees, many of us pay the full year during the time of year that we can afford to. This is important to us to maintain the 1 month free when we pay for our bills. I, for one, cannot afford to make monthly fees. I make my money in a seasonal manner, and I can afford to pay in a seasonal manner. This is just another cut to us in the working community that we cannot afford. As with many of us in the harbor, these boats are our only source of income. We're not a .com industry. We don't have exponential growth. So please maintain our rent structures as current rates and schedules are. And if I could pull this off the calendar, I would do it in perpetuity.
Lisa Damrosch, please.
Hello, Commissioners. Lisa Damrosch with the Half Moon Bay Seafood Marketing Association. A letter from our association members was in your board packet dated in November. I sent another letter out today, basically reiterating the points in that letter, and had a couple of things to add based on having the ability to review the staff report. So in our letter dated in November, we made it pretty clear that we don't think this is the time to raise fees on commercial fishing. As has been mentioned, been disastrous, an officially disastrous crab season in 2015. 2016 was also a difficult season, some of the worst weather in history for us, and a lot of problems associated with that. Samoic acid continues. Salmon seasons have been a disaster. The current projections are a reduction of something like 64% over the average of the last years, which were not good. So there's not really a lot of hope on the horizon for improvements in the short term. So therefore, we obviously don't want an increase of fees to commercial fishing. If this moves forward, we do appreciate the request in the board packet for the additional 3% discount to the commercial fishing fleet. And if you go forward with the CPI, we would ask that that offsetting percentage be approved. Also in the package, we too feel very strongly about leaving that 3 month as an option. For some of our commercial fishing businesses, that's very important to be able to pay in one chunk and to have that 3 month for an incentive to do that. So we ask that that stay. And we also asked that the crab pot staging, if that turns out to be a fee that moves forward, that it not be subject to the CPI in the 3% a year or whatever it is. And if there's any questions, you can let me know.
And our next public comment person left. The motion on the floor. How would the commission like to proceed on item 11?
I'd like to have a discussion about it.
All right.
So, I'm not sure I understood. I think I understood most of the comments. There were a couple things Lisa said that I might need clarification on. So I've got this new version of the rates and fees. Glenn, can you point out to us where there are rates and fees in here that are contradictory to what the public's concerns were? So we can see where, like, for example, the issue of crab pot storage.
I'll try, and people in the public can watch, see if I skip over anything. Obviously, there was some expression in the public about the overall 3% increase, which is reflected throughout. And for the commercials, there was a suggestion that the commission look at increasing the commercial discount by 3% to offset that for the commercial fishery.
Where is that in here? Where do we see that?
Well, each fee has, where it's listed, has been raised by 3%. So if you look at the trap change, there's an old fee and a new fee. Of course, we rounded up, so we're not collecting pennies. The other kinds of things that are, let me just go down the list. We wanted to have a $120 a year discount for people to sign up for auto pay. The change, this was raised by the public. There's an objection to eliminating the 1 month free and reducing that, or in some cases, depends on what your birth fee is, changing that to $120.
I'm sorry, can you say that part again? Who gets 1 month free? How does that work?
If you pay a year in advance, you get a month free.
Okay.
Which is, as you can see from the birth rates, could be somewhere from $240 to a $500 a year discount. Staff has recommended that be $120 a year cap.
Instead of free?
Instead of 1 month. So depending on the size of your slip, it's a bigger discount for paying ahead. Staff was just looking at, what is the advantage to the district of having having people pay less frequently, and that was out of proportion. That obviously having the biggest discount possible is an advantage to the birther.
So you're recommending raising it to 125?
Lowering it actually, because all the births are less than 120 a year.
I'm sorry, I'm confused. So
all the births, every monthly birth fee is in excess of $120 a year.
I realize that, but you're saying instead of the 1 month free, then there'd be a fee of $125 per month.
You get a $120 a year discount as opposed to 1 free month.
Oh, I see.
If you
discount.
If you use auto pay or if you do advance pay. Either of those two.
Well, I have a question about and I'd love to hear public comment on this. Maybe someone could put in another speaker slip if they have a, comment on this. But it seems to me that there's a different way that we could potentially be charging for our slips. And it does seem to me that we should be giving some discount to our tenants that have long-term commitment, our best customers. And that's essentially what that free month was, right? It was rewarding our best customers because they were making a year commitment by paying in advance. Am I understanding that right?
I really can't speculate as to why it was done. I actually thought, and I may be wrong, that the reason for it was that it was some thought it was advantageous for the district to receive a year's payment in advance and not have to go through receiving money and collecting all year. Right. But over time, I think if that was the motivation, and I don't know that it was, because obviously if the point was to lower birth fees, one could have just lowered birth fees. So, and tenants can stay, it's month to month, so if they obey the rules, tenants can stay as long as they want.
Well, I'm not a big fan of the month-to-month deal that we've got going here. I don't think it's the norm, and I'd really like to see us consider making some changes in the rates and fees so that we have month to month as an option, certainly, but we also have a transient rate, and we have a seasonal rate, and we have an annual rate. And that would be sort of re-envisioning our slip fees. And that way we could, first of all, we would know what types of tenants we have with slips, because we'd have more information about their intentions and how long they plan to stay and sort of their commitment to the slip. But also, so that would be like a really valuable piece of information for the district to know, what the intentions of the leasee were. But in addition to that, we would then be able to give a discount to the longest term commitment. So if we had an agreement for, say, a 1-year lease or license or whatever we're going to call it, we would be able to discount the rate based on the fact that the tenant was committing for a year. Forget about the paying all at once. I mean, that could be an option as well if people want to pay all at once. I think we need to do online billing and things that make it easier for people to pay, but we've been talking about that for years and it still hasn't happened yet. So to me, the online billing really also is a component of the rates and fees and something we should be talking about, but I don't want to get too far off the topic here. So what I'm proposing is that we get this back with an option to change the slip fee method and have a tiered alternative so that we could consider what that might look like. And we could do that based on how they do it in San Francisco, for example, with the tiered method. And we'll look at how that might work for the district, and also that would give the public an opportunity to give the board feedback on something like that if we could get that into the next draft of the rates and fees, because it looks like we're probably going to need to make some updates or some, changes here. So that's a suggestion that I have. But back to the issues. So with the crab pot staging, we have some people that really do clean up well, and then other people who leave a bunch of junk. I realize that's been going on for decades. If we're telling people that they basically don't get their deposit back, or all of their deposit back, right? Isn't that kind of what we're saying now? That we're just going to give back part of their deposit?
In other words, we're going to actually keep charges. It's essentially, we're going to be charging a fee.
A fee. Okay.
And what was the rationale for that?
We're an enterprise district.
Right.
They're using our space. That would be the only, that'd be
Okay.
all I could think of,
And costs associated with cleanup.
which the deposit would cover.
Yes.
And is this like when people park an RV and is this for renting a space for RVs?
This is for the crab pot storage.
Just
There's
for
a
the
different
crab
rate
pots.
for the RV and a monthly rate for the RV.
What are we charging for the RV?
Currently, I think it's, we charge, so I think it's 45 to go, and suggested we go to 50, and the monthly, down to the point. I don't know why, I think it's just, I'm guessing at things when we haven't written down.
How long do they stay? Like 3 months?
I think you stay in the,
Most of them are gone now.
Here, the RV parking for recreational, for commercial fishers is 45, would go to 50.
Would go to 50 a night?
50 a day. The monthly rate is $450, will go to $500, both being 10 times the daily rate. And recreational vehicle
There's a
parking.
monthly, there's a monthly rate for RVs?
Yes, $450 currently. And this is restricted by weight. This is restricted to commercial fishermen, I understand, for the monthly rate. I understand that recreationals, they have a $50 a day, the same rate, but they don't have a monthly rate.
They
And that's
don't-
nothing new.
Meaning that
That's what's been.
they can't stay monthly.
I don't see anything in rates and fees that speaks to the length of stay. I believe that is elsewhere in
That was
the ordinance code.
ordinances, yes.
Okay. Well,
That's 2 weeks.
it seems to me that, the whole camping thing is a little weird because we don't have facilities for that at the Harbor District. And we have no restroom facility. You know, we've got people that don't necessarily have everything they need in their RV. That's witnessed by walking around. You can see the buckets. You know, so I don't know. I mean, I think we need to be looking at that, and I'd love to hear input from John on if we're gonna, you know, I'm getting off on a different topic now, but if we're gonna be providing camping facilities for people with RVs, then we need to have the proper restroom and water and so on and so forth facility to go along with it, because we're not really running an RV lot like, say, the one that Keat runs, where there's sewer connections and, you know, people can pump out and what have you. I just see a whole lot of problems with that, but it seems to me that we should.
I'm not saying this addresses it, but I do want to point out that we have a statement about them being self-contained. In other words, they're supposed to have tanks for not using buckets, and I would hope our folks are able to enforce that.
It just seems like if we were gonna raise rates, I would like to see us raising rates on the RV situation and discouraging some of that, and keep our rates as low as possible for anything related to the fishing vessels. I know that there is a connection because some commercial fishermen are living in their RVs during the season, but I would really prefer to, you know, make it as accessible as possible for people who need to store their crab pots temporarily, so long as that they're keeping it clean. Obviously, if they don't, they need to pay for us to do that work with the deposit. You know, that's kind of how I see it. And then as far as the raising of rates on the commercial end of things right now, and that would include the charter boats, because they're also, you know, running a commercial operation. I don't know if I can make sense out of what's here and what's in Lisa's letter, but why do we have to raise the rates at all, given the fact that we just had the crab disaster with the salmon disaster last year, and now we've got a really bad salmon disaster this season? How much are we suggesting to raise the rates? Just 3%? Is that all?
Keeping with cost of living.
Okay, and so what the
In most cases, there are some changes, as I started to go down the list, that are different, such as the change in the in the advance pay discount. There's a new fee for that the Harbor Patrol asks for mooring. If someone is at a mooring more than 7 days, we charge them $10 a day, because not so much as a revenue generator, but to give us that interface with people who are using moorings.
So they're coming into the
Yeah,
office.
so not everything is strictly 3%. 90% of what we see there is 3%. There's some changes to the advance pay, and also the suggestion to you about increasing the commercial discount.
And the CIP is an amount of 3% that we're suggesting apply every year without it coming back to the board.
What we're suggesting is that whatever the Bay Area urban consumers CPI was from the previous calendar year is, that would be increased each July. So basically, it'd be another way of saying keeping pace with inflation.
So I guess my concern is, at what point do we, if we're having a number of bad seasons in a row for fishing, at what point do we price people out of being able to have a fishing business? And is there, if we go ahead with this automatic CIP thing, it doesn't give the public an opportunity to come to us and say, hey, we had a really bad season, we're on the brink of disaster here, and the CPI. Yeah.
And so how long would that be?
I
In
think that the
perpetuity?
commission could always hear the public and say, we've had a bad, as we did last year. I mean, I think
So,
that's
yeah,
why we
on a
have
case-by-case
all of you.
Right.
I guess I'd be comfortable with the CIP so long as it doesn't apply to CPI, whatever it is.
Well, because there is a CIP
Okay,
here.
thank you. So long as it doesn't apply to commercial, because I think one of the things I really appreciate is getting an update, and it's usually only the commercial fishermen that show up when it's rates and fees time. And I always, hopefully this whole discussion will drag out over a couple of meetings so that they have full and ample opportunity to get here and speak to us if they think there's a problem with what we're proposing. And so I am very concerned that by not having that annual meeting where we consider it publicly, that we will be shutting down the public process and the transparency and the opportunity for input, and opportunity for us to hear from the commercial fishermen and check in on what their expectations are about the upcoming season. So I love the idea of streamlining things, but I don't think this is the place to do it. I think that we get really into talking about stuff that has nothing to do with what goes on the ground at the harbor or at the marina. And, planning this, planning that, a lot of our plans never go anywhere, we all know that. But this is the stuff that actually affects the people that are doing the work and where this is their primary place of business. And I want to hear from those people. I want to have that opportunity to check in with them. So I don't support doing any sort of automatic raising of rates without it coming to the board and having a transparent public process. I can't support that.
So I'm
Well,
gonna make the
basically,
revised motion to item 11.
I don't think we have to revise the motion, because number one, all we're doing is directing staff to publish a notice to call for a public hearing, exactly what Commissioner Brennan is asking for. Commissioner Brennan also asked to hear more from the public, and William Smith, Captain Smitty, had pointed at the podium.
Right, but there isn't a motion to direct
In regards to getting back to payment for a year, part of that was that it allowed us to make our payments during the part of the season where we were financially capable of making it. The incentive of the 1 month's free was partly to offset the interest and cost, the interest payment that would be earned on that money during the course of the year. So if you had it in savings, you would end up with something that would be comparable to that. That was
I see.
the original intention of it.
And I don't have any problem with us continuing to do that, frankly. I think it's been working, people seem to like it, and it's nice for the district to get a big payment once a year versus a bunch of little payments.
That was part of the original setup of the harbor. This goes back to the very beginning.
And it's also to allow flexibility for the commercial fishing businesses. There may be years where paying it by the month is better because of the way that season went, and then following a particular season, there may be, the budgetary ability to make a larger payment, and then there's a benefit for that. So it's allowing flexibility for the commercial fishing and the charter boats to pay in advance if that works for their business.
Could you guys, and I mean the Half Moon Bay Seafood Marketing Association and any other fishermen that aren't related to the association, would it be possible for you guys to think about the idea of doing a tiered system and how that might work or not work, and how it might be tailored to address some of the things that you've just talked about? I mean, just kind of put your, not right this second, but maybe think about it, and I'd love to hear some feedback about that down the road.
Yeah, I think my immediate concern when you presented it was just if then you categorize yourself as an annual, and then
You need to change
something
it.
happens and you need to be monthly, or if you categorize yourself as a monthly, and then you have the opportunity to pay annually. I just don't know if it will make it more confusing to have to box your business into a certain.
The whole amount, any month you want.
Now you can, yes.
Yeah.
No, I think the way it is.
Always been that way.
But
Yes.
Administration's
Just wanna keep it
concern
that
about
way.
a tiered rate would be as long as it was based on all boaters, recreational and commercial boaters together, or a certain area of berth, because otherwise we have to individually handle each one instead of our billing system. So for example,
Well, the restructuring of how we do our berth rental agreements is sort of outside of the scope of the rates and fees discussion.
So,
And I certainly hear what you're saying, and would love to have staff sit with the Seafood Marketing Association and come up with something, but it's outside of rates and fees now.
But if you are
Okay.
inclined to, I think you said, have a charge a different rate to commercial, the way that works best for us administratively has the same impact, is to increase the discount by the same 3%.
okay, through the chair,
Go
through the
ahead.
chair. So I think there are a lot of things that can be discussed, and I'm not even gonna weigh in on my concerns on both sides. But there is a revised motion, which is to direct staff to publish a notice calling for a public hearing to consider adoption of rates and fees schedule that will include a proposed increase equivalent to the CPI of 2016, and as shown in Exhibit A, as may be revised effective July 1st, 2017, and by said CPI in each subsequent year. Basically, this motion is calling for a public hearing, and I'm willing to make that motion for a public hearing at a future date, and y'all can determine the date. But really, honestly, I don't even think I have enough information here, because I'm gonna be asking for an understanding of enterprise and public funds and what the funding gap would be, and how the funding gap would be filled percentage-wise between public funds and enterprise funds. So, and I'm very cognizant of the macro picture. So I think that there are so many other things that we have to discuss with regard to this issue, that it's important enough to have its own public hearing where we can have a full discussion with, quite frankly, more information.
Where's the this is the
Yeah,
revised, because I keep
yeah.
reading this.
Yeah, I
motion.
know, so they just passed this out, so that's my motion. If there's a second,
The revision is just,
it's
Go
basically to give a public notice for
Right.
a
So-
meeting.
that revision specifically speaks to the crab pot, because that was the only change.
Oh,
from us.
well, okay, well, that's the motion I would do for the whole item.
Right.
So this is,
Is there a second to the motion?
I need to
Second.
reread it. I need to
So
reread
Robert
it.
has seconded the motion.
Robert, second.
Why are we getting this stuff so last minute? I don't understand why this is happening. This is really difficult to not, you spend all this time preparing for a meeting.
So while I understand this is for the crack pot thing, the issue, I would
Oh,
rather.
no, that motion is for the entire rates and fees discussion.
Agenda, right,
The-
that's the
I was
one I'm
referring to
talking
the
about.
handout that Commissioner Brennan had her hand, which referred to only one portion of the
Okay,
rates
well,
and fees
this is the
discussion.
motion on the table, your
Which-
revised motion.
Public meeting.
We all
which
looking at
says
the
Public
same
hearing at a
I
future
think so.
date.
Okay.
So that, because we're not gonna, I don't think we can resolve this issue
No, we
tonight.
need more information.
The
and we need
gist
more
of this
discussion.
motion is simply to direct
public
staff
hearing.
to have a public hearing.
Right.
Right.
That's
On
all.
the- On all of the
The
rates
Yes,
whole,
and fees.
right.
for the whole,
Correct.
this whole agenda item, which is
I
rates
say
and
go
fees.
for it.
Right, so
Okay,
this,
can we have
I
a-
made the motion and Robert seconded it,
Well,
so.
I don't understand what it says. It doesn't say just that we're gonna have a public hearing. It says all this other stuff that I don't understand. Can somebody explain this motion
Well,
to
it's
me?
the actual agenda item.
Direct staff to publish a notice calling for a public hearing to consider adoption of rates and fees schedule that will include a proposed increase,
The main thing is that if there's.
a
gonna be-
proposed, that will include a proposed increase equivalent to consumer index, blah, 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 as shown, Exhibit A, as may be revised. Well, I'd also like to see an alternative that incorporates some of the concerns that we've heard from the Half Moon Bay Seafood Marketing Association
can be
and
in
other
discussion.
people. I'd like to see more than one option for discussion when we have this come back.
You're welcome to change any of the numbers
At this
this
public
meeting
hearing.
or.
There's a motion and a second.
There's a motion and a second,
I mean,
and we're
there's
at
a motion.
9:15, and we
Yes.
still have items to
Very
vote on, so I would like to call for the question.
May we have a roll call?
Commissioner Tush,
Aye.
Commissioner Reyes,
Aye.
Commissioner Shanker,
Aye?
Commissioner Brennan,
No.
Commissioner Bernardo.
Aye.
All right.
Okay, I would, thank you for the reminder, Commissioner Shankarelli. I would remind the chair that it is 9:15. We have the preliminary budget, which we consider fairly essential for adoption this evening. And there are a couple of items on the consent calendar that we would like to see adopted too. So you may consider a motion to extend the meeting at this point.
Or can we just, I mean, how many items are there to vote on, the preliminary budget and
Bills and
basic?
claims, for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah, so if we can, should we just vote on bills and claims now, and so we can have the discussion on the, preliminary budget? And-
You start using the word budget and everybody runs out of here like rats off of a ship.
You know, that really hurts my feelings.
Doesn't hurt mine.
Right,
But stays.
Before you do the motion, can you explain to me what you mean by preliminary budget?
Oh, that's the item, the agenda item.
so
Item 12 is to adopt preliminary budget, so as,
What does that mean?
this is our
Oh.
budget process for the year for the Harbor District, and it takes a couple of meetings.
right, so this is not the formal budget for this is the first or second look at this. There are gonna be probably more changes.
What would happen is, you adopt a preliminary budget, you are required by law to put legal notices in the paper, post them all over the place for the public to review them, in this case, almost 2 full months, a little more than 2 full months, and then you have a hearing on June 21st and adopt your final budget, which, by the way, is still not really final because you still have the opportunity to revise it throughout the year. But it does state that we then send that final budget to the Board of Supervisors. It is the way that we are permitted to operate until further change. But it is required to do an to adopt a preliminary budget so the public knows,
Can weigh in.
knows 60 days, has 30 days to weigh in, to look at it,
And the
ask
board.
questions, as well as
Yeah,
yourself.
okay.
Not knowing how long the slightest budget discussion will take, I'd like to make a motion to extend the meeting till 10 o'clock, praying that we get done earlier.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Would you like a roll call vote?
Commissioner Bernardo?
Aye.
Commissioner Tancarella?
Aye.
Commissioner Mateusz?
Aye.
Commissioner Lorenz?
Aye.
Commissioner Brennan?
Aye.
Okay.
Do you believe that you'd like to go through the budget?
Well, I can go through it. I can also do a short version where this gets adopted and gets published, and you think about it and do your real work on June 21st, but I am prepared to, go through it.
How
It really depends on the
would you like?
commission's pleasure.
I
Have
want
some
to sit
public
down
input.
outside of this
So,
afterwards.
can
I'm agnostic.
I thought it
I think we need a lot of
Good.
time on this budget.
Well,
I
this
think-
is,
but I just have a couple
over, it's
of
over. So
questions.
this is it. If you have questions.
And actually, and
We
I'm
only
gonna,
do this
cause I
so many
looked at the whole thing, Glenn, and see, do you mind if I kind of jump around?
It will come back.
How
How many-
Jump around to the different
One more
sections.
time.
What's, how many?
2 more,
Two more.
For what?
The last
the
one.
budget.
Yeah, so Glenn, there are a couple of things. One is probably more nitpicky than anything. The personnel piece here where you got inactive position control. It's on page 12 of 65, I think. You had inactive designees, right? So are those?
What page? I'm sorry.
It's on the screen as
12
well.
Yeah, the position control page.
Can
which
you
is
just give me the page number?
12-65.
Okay.
So, are those inactive designees, are they still open requisitions even though they're not funded and not filled? I mean, why are
We
they
just have,
here?
we have the job class. We did not.
Because we might need them in the future?
We just have the job class, sure you might.
Okay. Okay, I just wanna make sure that, okay. Then there's this other part, 1245, and this is for the public and enterprise issue, which is something that, it's one of my priorities is to continue to refine that, which, by the way, this is great so far. So this is the public and enterprise summary, and you've got the dollars allocated do we have these dollars marked the time allocation of staff for different functions? Is that how these dollars are derived also?
How they're derived is I looked at, we have data on how our crews spend their time. They do this on every time sheet.
So it is marked.
That's
by now.
one of the driving forces. Other driving forces are, there are some obvious direct charges. We know whether a
Right.
capital improvement is a public or an enterprise improvement.
Right.
And this will get much more sophisticated as our financial system becomes more sophisticated, their project software, that sort of thing. On the revenue side, then it's really pretty easy. We know that our enterprise revenue is the fees,
Right.
and we know that our public revenue is the property taxes and miscellaneous.
Okay, so just, I mean, I didn't see like a little, like a little asterisk kind of thing, like what you have for the position control thing, so page, so. I mean, I'm glad you answered, but maybe you can add like a little asterisk saying that there's direct and indirect costs are factored into this versus just revenues and expenses. Does that make sense? Or maybe it's all tied in and I'm just asking for too much granularity?
Well, no, or send me a note, and, I mean,
Okay.
the purpose is for this to be understandable, so
Okay.
let's see what we can do.
Well, I think we need to explain what's public and enterprise, and, that needs to be clear.
So then I had one last question on page 12-69, which is under the capital improvements plan. Under, we have dredging services for 500,000, which is, so that is for, is that? Yeah, but it's there under, dredging services. Is that just for Oyster Point? One, and two, I actually would like to have, and I mentioned this to the general manager, a reserve specifically for dredging. And maybe this is a good start.
I think the commission could do a couple of things. They could direct that we add a reserve for dredging, and you would see that by the final budget. They could send to the finance committee to discuss a proposal to add to our reserves policy, a reserve for dredging, and bring that back. Some combination of that. But if you did the simple thing would be if you directed us to come up with a reserve for dredging, we would try to come up with an annual amount. I'm speaking to John, and we would add it as a assigned reserve.
So I would like to see that. I don't know if my
Direction would be great, and then I think we would then follow up by amending the reserve policy.
Right, so I'd love to hear from my fellow commissioners about setting aside having reserve buckets specifically for dredging. It just seems to be such a high cost thing that needs to be done. And I just want to make sure that we have enough money set aside for this, and whatever the maximum amount is, I don't know. I mean, we can make that decision, but if we have a reserve for that, then we know that we won't have possibly a deferred maintenance issue or, those kinds of problems that come up. So I'd love to hear.
I would defer to my colleague. My understanding is, like many of our expensive projects, we have some big expensive projects because they haven't been done. But
Right.
dredging is something that rather than be a reserve thing, we should actually be spending money nearly every year or almost
Yeah.
every year on
But
dredging.
having it be set aside with reserves makes it a priority, I think.
I could say that we could easily look back at our last dredge episode, for instance, at each property, even though from what I've seen, the dredge episodes have been very isolated, not overall large dredge episodes, which is often the case.
We also haven't done dredging over a period of time either, because then it has become a problem. Like, look at beach replenishment. That committee alone dealt with that issue.
I think for such
And now we're
large
having
projects
to
like
be
this that
reactive.
we know will reoccur, that putting aside reserves for them would be logical, and we could look at the past issues and and our current depths and try to determine, of course, when we will need to potentially dredge and how much we will need to remove, and thusly try to put annual reserves together.
Last question?
Under the general manager's direction, we have already, and we are moving toward creating new 5-year dredge permits where we can already have the permitting in place to do isolated dredge episodes relatively quickly, where we're having due to storm activity or prop wash,
Right.
whatever, be able to
I just want to make sure
take
we have
quicker
enough
action.
time to do this whenever, I mean, not be reactive and be proactive.
Commissioner Moranis.
So, what I'm wondering is, on this budget, I'm new to this, but we have a capital improvement plan. We have a 5-year view. So how does this budget work within the context of that 5-year plan? And is there a way you can, I mean, I see a lot of numbers, but,
It's in
So through a lot
yeah, I
of,
know it's in here, but it's just
through a
numbers.
lot of communication and, we don't get this to be full screen.
Part of that will come in with our strategic plan, that's when we should actually put dates on these things.
Right.
Yeah, and so how does, so that's my point, is,
So what happens is that when we get to June, especially, because we're still putting in input from the workshops and making some adjustments to what we're doing this year, but when we get to June, what will happen is all of the things that are in the capital improvement plan for 17, 18 will be in the budget. And then the same process will occur next year, starting in probably December. And in 18, when we get to 18, 19, the same thing will happen. All the things that are slated to be done in 18, 19 will be in the plan.
so is this in our,
We can't read that. What page number is that?
That's like a page.
So this is page,
we have a member of the.
So the capital improvements plan,
well, is that
the capital projects for
1269?
this coming budget year.
1253.
They're on page
1253.
53.
No.
Yes. So those are all the capital expenditures planned for this year, at this point in time, are in that third column.
So add that.
That almost perfectly matches with what's in the CIP for 17-18 at this point in time, with one exception, which is there's a administrative project that shows in the CIP that actually we're going to do this year. But that's how that comes together. So the final budget, and this might help illuminate this some, over the next couple of months, as I'm talking to John about what's being finished up this year and what remains for last year, in the final budget, what you'll see is all of the projects that aren't finished this year will appear in the 17-18 budget. Some of the projects in the 17-18 budget might be rolled out to 18-19 if we don't think we can get them all accomplished. And that will and then when we start with the CIP again, in the following, probably January, it'll begin with showing what you had planned for 17-18 and proposals for 17-18 through 2023.
A budget's a roadmap,
Yeah.
and then it's our best guess at what we're gonna do, and when and how. And there's also classes available to inform the commissioners how to proceed with
I
budget.
think some of the confusion is that the budget
Yeah.
is annual and the CIP is a 5-year plan.
So, on page 12-39, you have revenues by department. And we have 1412225 is 13%, then 1414225 is 29%. I think it's just a typo.
Nope, it's because one is 141225 is 13% of the revenue, and 142225 is 9% of the expenditures. So the top graph is revenues, the bottom is expenditures. That 1412 represents that in administration, we only allocate revenues to administrations until the point where it covers all of our expenses.
The top graph has two similar numbers and two vastly different percentages.
Right, because the top graph is revenues,
It's revenue.
and the bottom graph, in other words,
Glenn,
we're going to spend far more than
Glenn.
our revenues this year.
Look at the number in administration, 1412225. Look at the number at Oyster Point Marina.
Yeah.
It's the same number.
Oh, the number didn't get changed. I see what you're telling me.
That's what I'm trying to say.
Ha!
Okay.
Yes, the Oyster Point Marina number
While you're
is on the chart.
looking at that number, Mr. Ratz.
But
Oh, God, I remember thinking that.
Oh,
For correct number for Oyster Point, by
What's
the
the
way,
correct number?
4380298
Which one?
For the revenue, the blue piece of the pie is the
in
revenue.
expenditures.
Well,
Oh, in
no, in
revenues,
revenues, right?
the Oyster Point number should be,
For,
the-
no, it's.
should be
it's not
3161761.
3161, what is it?
761, I'm getting that off the details.
761 down.
Okay, thank you.
And I'm sorry that the wrong
Didn't
rap
see
got
that.
on top.
It's right here. So this.
316171, okay.
So
Mr.
just to be
Ratz,
clear,
please.
the revenue coming in for Oyster Point is $3,161,761. And the expense, the money that we're paying to run Oyster Point is $4,380,298. Is that correct?
The total revenue, including revenue that's allocated to Oyster Point, Yeah.
Just for Oyster Point, that's all I'm talking about.
3161761.
What she said,
The
yeah.
total expenses,
Including capital.
including capital, for Oyster Point are 4380298, and there is a deficit for Oyster Point of 1218547. That's public enterprise combined,
Right,
including capital.
Including the expenditures. on
If
capital.
you
and that's a net number.
Right, if you only look, we have no operating deficits in either harbor if you were not looking at capital expenditures. Our operational income covers our operational
Right,
expenses.
and Phil's point is that.
In both.
Right.
Oh, both harbors are in
Capital,
deficit
right.
because we are doing an enormous amount of capital
Improvement.
spending, that's the plan. And we're using our reserves to do that.
Oh, we have a public comment from Mr. Ratz.
Okay, first of all, I'd just like to compliment Glenn and staff the progress that has been made in budgeting over the past couple of years. But part of the confusion in this discussion is that, and I think part of the presentation that makes it difficult to understand is that the revenue and expenditure charts you've just been talking about, the revenues are an annual basis, but expenditures are a mixture of annual expenditures and capital.
Yeah.
And I think those two parts of the budget really need to be separated so that you can clearly see what the operating results are and then have a clear picture of what the capital expenditures are separated. Also, a missing component that if I were a commissioner that I would want to see, you have a 5-year capital plan. But you have no plan as to how you're going to finance those capital improvements on terms of the sources of funds for those improvements. One of the sources of funds for those improvements are positive operating results. And so that needs to be, I think those pieces, and they can be easily teased out and put into a summary presentation, would really facilitate, the discussion of the budget and what it really means to the long-term finances of the commission.
Yep. we're trying to
This
get
is
at.
not, because I actually had a conversation with Commissioner Brennan earlier today, so I don't think this graphic quite displays it, but if you turn to page, say for the bar graph,
So at the beginning of the report.
bar graph by department.
Department?
47?
Yeah,
Yes,
I
sir.
think it's at
Starting at 40, starting on 46, that graph, what you can see there is you've got on top, this is, if I'm talking about the consolidated, if you look at the consolidated, you'll see that, you can see that on top is our enterprise revenue, and the bar underneath it is expenditures, and the gray is capital. So what you can actually visually see there is that the revenue overall is covering, for enterprise, is covering all of the enterprise expenditures, except the gray area is what puts it over. The same is true for the public revenue. It is the capital expenditures. Therefore, the reverse of that is they're using reserves. We also broke that down by department. So at Oyster Point, in particular, you can see that long, in my printout it's green, it might be gray, capital area that's above the enterprise revenue. That represents reserve spending at Oyster Point on enterprise activities. The public expenditures, you can see, they pencil out. At Pillar Point, the enterprise revenue, again, does not cover the capital costs at investment that we're planning for Pillar Point. The same is true for the public revenue at Pillar Point. It's just not enough to cover all the capital costs, so we're using reserves. Thing to remember, of course, is what are reserves? Well, those reserves are past operating, for lack of a better word, even though we don't use profit in government, it's the past operating net, the surplus went into the reserves, and probably, I'm just speculating here, but probably had we been completing maintenance at the furious pace that John is doing it now, moving projects along, we probably wouldn't have the same size reserves that we have, but we would also have to spend a whole lot less on capital because everything would have been done early.
So that's the.
So you really, when you look at spending on reserves for this district, you really have to see it as catching up. That money got into reserves because work wasn't done previously.
So Glenn, that is the 4.8 million, right, that you're gonna dip into?
So the 4.8 million that is showing
I'm looking at
the
page
total.
1234. I mean, basically,
Right, the
it's
4.8
consolid-
million reduction to reserve
Right.
represents,
43% of the budget.
right.
Bud's point.
And that assumes what? That assumes that we complete everything we plan to do this year, complete everything that we're going to complete next year, and spend all of our money and get all of our revenue. Now, a chart I'd really like to show you is on page 60, which is, has the 12-60.
1260.
Because here's, I think this tells a really interesting story. You have the first silo is 14-15 actual, these are our reserves, essentially our bank account. For 14-15, we had 17.6 million. Our ending balance in the next year, 15-16, went down to 14 million, but that was the year that we paid off the DBW loan. When we were planning the budget, which remember, we didn't know our final reserve yet when we were planning the budget for the current year. When we were planning our budget, we thought we would have $12.2 million in reserves at the end of this year. The next one, which I find really fascinating, is this was how much money we had in the bank on March 31st. 16.8 million, meaning our revenues were higher than projected, our expenditures were lower, partially because of uncompleted projects. So when we get to 2017-18, The reserve of 12.2 is very close to what we thought we would end up at the end of this year. And it probably reflects that we're going to finish the projects that we didn't finish this year.
So can I ask you a question, Brandon? Maybe it's something I've never come across the term trial balance before.
Yeah, it means that it's our unaudited balance.
Okay. You could have, okay.
I could have
It would have been, you could have used unaudited.
Yeah.
That would have been a lot.
I will
I've
say too,
understood that.
as Commissioner Brennan and I were discussing this
Yeah,
earlier
that
too.
makes better sense.
We're actually gonna have our non-financial staff read this book and highlight everything in yellow that is jargon so that I can clarify.
Okay, then on 1259, there's this 5 multi-year obligation reserve. I know there's nothing allocated.
Right, we don't have that in our current reserve
Can we just
policy.
pull that out, or what, okay, why is that?
I think that was there at one point in the past. It was part of our reserve policy.
It
Was
would
required.
have been
It was
in
required.
the, it would have been in the 15-16 budget as the obligation to pay the DVW debt.
Oh,
And as the 15-16 budget is still showing on this chart,
you
the
want to,
line item is still there.
okay,
Next year it'll go.
we'll go, okay, great, thank you.
All right.
But we actually have nothing in it at the end of the year because
Right,
Pay
but I
off.
mean, but still, if you've got, you're still looking at that, I mean, the 18-19. So are you saying this will be off in 18-19?
When we do this.
You
when we
won't
do
see it
Or
in-
17-18?
No, the 17,
It's in for the 17-18, it'll
right,
be
and
out in
then
18-19.
it'll be out in 18.
Okay,
We're-
thank you.
We're down to very little time left and I have questions, so are we gonna, other commissioners gonna be able to ask
I'm
questions or?
done, thanks.
Anyone else?
No. Commissioner Brennan has questions on the budget.
Okay, thank you. So I'm glad to hear that we are gonna be adding the clarification on what things mean in here,
Yeah.
because I think a lot of people don't understand what non-operating revenue is, and we need to explain that that's property tax and a few other things, and many people don't understand what enterprise revenue means, or, you know, they don't understand the situation with the reserves. And I think we don't really understand the situation with the reserves based on what we got here, because we aren't projecting far enough into the future about where our reserves are gonna be in 5 and 10 years based on the rate that we're spending money. Knowing that we still have many, many capital projects that we haven't even scratched the surface on, and more coming as things continue to break down. And we haven't even gotten into the strategic plan or the master plan yet. So, one thing that Glenn and I were talking about earlier today was, changing the scope of page 1260, because right now it only goes, it doesn't go out very far. In fact, it doesn't go out far at all, with reserves. And in the past, with our old finance director, we always got more like a 10-year projection for our reserves. And that's very helpful so that we can plan ahead and think carefully about what CIP projects we actually fund, given, you know, those projections. And I know that, you know, 5-10 years out, you can't be completely accurate. But again, this is just to kind of give us a general sense of the stability of the district. And so I'm hoping that we can get that information going forward.
It's
And
kind
then,
of like retirement planning. You can pretty well estimate where you'll be next year and the year after, but the further out you go. But that's just something you have to understand when you look at it, and that's why it gets looked at every year.
yeah, so, and we can see, we'll learn by seeing it every year, but I don't think we got that last year either. So could we get that in the next
I
version?
can, yeah, with that caveat, the further out I go, the more
Yeah, I get
going to
it.
be the results. But yeah, I can do that.
And then back to page 39, so 12-39. What would be really helpful, I think, is if we could see another set of pie charts, because the pie charts to me are much easier to read than the graphs, and make it super clear what the, where the property tax fits into this, or as you call it, the non-operating revenue. But we should make sure it's clear to people that's property tax plus a little bit of that extra stuff. And what the situation with the reserves is. So we have pie charts that show the property tax that's being spent on admin, OPM, PPH, and then also a pie chart that shows, you know, how much reserves are being spent on admin, OPM, and PPH. So those two additional charts, and any way we can make that clear so we can kind of see, you know, how we're spending the money. In the past, we used to get charts like that, that were easy to read.
So can I just ask a quick question? The public funds are not considered non-operating, are they? I always thought they were part of operations, and how you break it out between enterprise and public are different, but they can be part of operating funds. They would have to be, because you're doing functions for.
I mean, yes, public
Right.
funds are used for operations.
Right, so they're not.
We have had discussion about what terminology used that was least confusing, and I mean,
Yeah, but
we need
that
to
would be
have,
very
we
confusing.
need to have some more. I mean, I think you've got your, to me, there's the enterprise funds, which you earn through your activities, and there are this other pot of money that we get by statute because we are here.
But in this budget, you're using the term non-operating revenue for property
Right, and I think
tax.
we might discuss,
Right. Well, I think that.
the general manager trying to discuss better terminology for those.
So-
That is not an accurate depiction, right?
Right, and we
Regard-
will develop a glossary, as I know.
So I was gonna say, regardless of how you decide to call these things, you need to define them up front somewhere.
Yeah, a glossary, a
And,
glossary.
and not just a glossary, because I'm sorry, most people are not gonna read the glossary. So it needs to be denoted on each page what, or there needs to be an indication to check the glossary or something. Otherwise, you know, you could really get the wrong idea reading this. I mean, I have a hard enough time, and I've been looking at this thing for years. Every year it's different, so there's no consistent, you know, I'm not a complaint to you, because I know you're making it better, but it's like I have to learn a new system every year, because
It's not
it's like
complaining, it's actually how we make it better.
yeah,
I mean,
but it's hard for the board because we're like having to learn a new language, you know, and what these things mean. But I don't want to have to cross-reference back to a glossary every time I look at a page. I'd like to have all the information I need on the page, not have to cross-reference. Cross-referencing is a hassle.
it's a tough call, I mean, because we have the option of redefining things in parentheses where we do it. That can be cluttered sometimes in appearance. We can do split notes. I mean, we just have to pick, we'll try different things. What we're gonna do is try different things out on y'all, and we'll come up with the one you like best.
Well, I would vote for clarity over appearance.
Yeah, and I think maybe put, you know, if we need more pages to have less graphs on one page, then make the graph bigger and add more pages. You don't have to make this thing condensed, you know, more pages is fine if it helps us read and understand it. So, okay, so I agree with Bud's concerns. Can we incorporate that into the next version?
Or footnote it saying that's a net number, which is all in. Something, but I mean, I agree, that was not clear.
Mr. Ratz?
I have just a quick comment. The important thing, I think, for us all to remember, that there are the guiding principle under the budget and all the financial planning are sources and uses of funds, where the money comes from and it is generated and where it is going. And clarity of the presentation of the material in that format and terminology is extremely important.
What we'll try to do is we'll look at the bar charts on page 12-47 and see if we can find a way of clarifying that information. I think that information is there. Maybe it's the juxtaposition of that information with something else To make
And
it clear.
maybe because everybody sees pictures differently,
Yeah.
maybe we might have to display the same information in 2 different ways.
Right.
And that's,
If that makes sense.
that works.
Yeah, it's fine.
We'll figure that out.
So I'm not quite done. With regard to the CIP projects, which we need to consider, in the past, we've had budget workshops as special meetings, we've had CIP workshops as special meetings where we get a presentation. We also have what's happening with the draft terms that have been released regarding Oyster Point Marina, which have potentially a huge significant impact on the district's finances, and none of that is being incorporated into the CIP 5-year plan or the discussion with regard to the budget. And I think that we need to make sure that we're getting the whole picture, and I feel like we're kind of dividing things into segments and there's no integration. And so somehow that discussion needs to happen in conjunction with consideration.
I think that has been incorporated, but perhaps it needs to be a little clearer how that is.
It's not
and
clear.
And of course, it's incorporated up to the point that up to the point in time that we were at when the document was finished.
So what I would
For
propose,
example, in the revenue, we did take in mind the changes, made some assumptions about the changes that were happening at Oyster Point, for example.
wait,
So
yeah, but we haven't been presented with that. Like, what are we supposed to be, mind readers here? And, I mean, I can't read every number in this thing. I need the staff to help me understand how this all.
That was actually in the previous iteration of the budget, but I think
We'll keep trying to perfect it.
And
we'll keep trying to be more informative.
What I would suggest, because I think that there is a lot of important stuff happening here, is that we have a special meeting where we, number one, go over the CIP 5-year plan and get the presentation from John that he put a lot of time into creating, and really get into understanding the context for the CIP projects that the staff is recommending, so that we can see how they fit together and understand why they're significant or important part of the budgeting process, and make some decisions on what's relevant and what to prioritize, and also look at that in context with our diminishing reserves and all of those other factors that we need to consider. We also need to, in my opinion, include in that sort of a workshop type environment, consideration of the budget. So it's CIP 5-year, it's budget, and it's also looking at how the numbers pencil out for the various different scenarios that could come our way related to the development project at Oyster Point Marina, and how things could potentially go in different scenarios there. And, I was present at the liaison committee meeting. I heard what the 2 agency representatives of each district, or the district and the city, said, and everybody was perplexed because there's no financials to back up any of this information that's being presented. There's no data to back it up. We need to start looking at the data and thinking about how it all works together and how we can make cohesive decisions based on the full scope of the future of the district. And granted, we're just looking at a budget for next year, but these are all really important, relevant things that we need to consider when making budget decisions and CIP planning decisions. So that's my suggestion, because we're almost out of time, and there's so much here that I would love to go over and understand in more detail. And I feel like we're kind of going blind with, especially not having had a presentation on the 5-year CIP. I mean, in the past, we always started with that, and then we got into the budget. And we started with that in very early spring, right after the holidays, pretty much. And then, we kind of worked into the phasing of the budget. So I feel like we're kind of not doing these things in the right order, and it's creating confusion in following this budget. So those are my suggestions.
I actually think we can do better. We should do better. I think we did have a CIP discussion. I think it was in January.
Right.
But you're right. I mean, I don't want to start being sound at all defensive. I think that certainly if you're having problems with it, it's not the budget document we want it to be yet. We've got a lot to do. We've got some plans ahead. We've got some new blood coming in to work on it. I'm excited about how far we've gotten. I think you're going to be very happy with the final product, but I still believe you'll have improvements for it. And one of the things that we're going to ask the Finance Committee to do is look at that final budget and recommend how we can improve it the next year.
So I just want to say this is a vast improvement from last year. So when I first got on this board, this is, I think, significantly better. So
President Matoush,
I was going to make a motion to adopt.
Thank you very much.
Resolution number 1703, approving the 17-18 preliminary budget as recommended by staff and as revised at this meeting.
Second.
Roll call.
Commissioner Bernardo?
Aye.
Commissioner Brennan?
Aye.
Commissioner Chancarelli?
Aye.
Commissioner Lorenz?
Aye.
President Matoush?
Aye. In order to continue the furtherance of the district, we must take action on item 1. I do not believe that we can do that after Commissioner Brennan pulled it in 3 minutes. I'm going to ask for a 15-minute extension so we can get through item 1. It'll be the last item we take up today.
We need to start finishing our board packets here, and if we're gonna stick with 1 meeting a month, we need to commit to do the work and to hold longer meetings. And I'm committed to stay here till midnight if that's what it takes to get through our board packet. But this situation is not sustainable. We can't keep only getting through half of our board packet. We're not doing what we got elected to do, and we're not being responsible elected representatives if we're just gonna be like out of here at 10 regardless of where we are with the packet and keep rolling things over to the next meeting, to the next meeting, to the next meeting. I mean, I don't wanna have 2 meetings a month either, but the city council is there till 11:30 or midnight if they have to be, and so are other city councils. So, you know, we gotta make a commitment here.
Perhaps we could also start our meetings earlier.
Yeah.
That's a separate discussion. I'm
Right.
very
So
sensitive of the time
So
on
do you
item
want
1.
it to be?
I'd like to say 15 minutes for item 1.
So moved.
Second?
I'm gonna second that, but I wanna say that after that 15 minutes, I'm not extending a third time. Personally, I will not.
We're going to vote on that in roll call.
Commissioner Brennan?
Aye.
Commissioner Lorenz?
Aye.
Commissioner Matoush?
Aye.
Commissioner Chancarelli?
Aye.
Commissioner Bernardo?
Aye.
Okay, item 1 on the agenda is review bills and claims in the amount of $404,000. Well, let me turn it over to the treasurer.
Okay.
Take a recommendation and then ask for public comment.
That you moved to approve this motion.
So you want to recommend this, you're saying?
Yeah,
Well,
this-
if you approve it,
Yeah,
then
have
we've
you
got to
looked at
open
this?
it up for public comment.
I've already approved it, so.
Oh, well, then make the
recommend-
motion and we'll open it for public comment.
Okay, I make a motion that we approve this and go to public comment.
Just
read
this exact
So-
thing, Ed. Just
read Oh, this exact accept
thing,
You might preface it
And you.
with saying, Commissioner Lorenz, as treasurer, I have reviewed
Right.
bills and claims and recommend.
Okay. As treasurer, I've reviewed the bills and claims, and so I'll read this. Accept the bills and claims in the amount of $404,916.53, including $341,397.48 to be approved on March 15, 2017, and $63,519.45 approved April 19, 2017. Pre-approved the $350,000 in bills and claims until the next meeting date.
I'll second that.
All right, we have public comment, so Commissioner Brennan, please.
It's not a public comment.
Well, okay, Commissioner comment.
Thank you. So the reason I pulled off the bills and claims is because we have one of our highest, I mean, they're all high, but it's probably one of our highest months of legal fees. We're at about $40,000 in legal fees between Hanson Bridget and Liebert Cassidy Whitmore. And I just want to bring that to the attention of the board because we were, I think, hoping that our legal fees were going to be going down, but instead they're going up. And the Finance Committee has requested, or actually maybe it was me who requested, I think I requested it, not the Finance Committee, a updated spreadsheet on our legal costs, and that hasn't arrived yet, but is that coming?
There is an updated spreadsheet that will be in the finance committee packet.
Okay, great.
I don't know that it's going to be exactly what you asked for. We do have an additional year's information on it from the last year.
But, all right, I'll wait to see what you have. And then the other thing I wanted to mention is in reviewing the bills and claims, which I did, I noticed that with regard to legal fees, that there was a draft summary of findings regarding conflict of interest.
Commissioner Brennan, the detail on legal fees is privileged.
Well, I'll just say this. It's my understanding that our legal team is not supposed to be advising commissioners on conflict of interest, and it appears that that's happening, and it appears that it's...
I can assure you that is not happening. I'm very mindful that my client is the Harbor District.
Right.
When it becomes necessary to advise or consider issues of conflict, it is purely from the perspective of whether there's a risk to the district of proceeding in the face of a conflict, and I do not provide advice to individual commissioners on conflicts of interest.
As we discussed, Commissioner Brennan.
So, as I said, I would like to read the draft summary so that I can feel assured that we're not advising individual commissioners on conflict of interest.
I'm not sure I know what you mean by a draft summary.
Created by Catherine Groves. Does she work with you?
As I addressed with you, Commissioner Brennan, yesterday when you brought this to my attention, I did speak to District Council and clarify for that for you verbally and told you that I can address that with you individually, but I'm not address that in this meeting.
So I'd just like to get a copy.
It's in the hands of your general manager.
As I said
Oh,
to
you have it?
yesterday,
No, you didn't tell me you had it.
I'm comfortable with a conversation about the detail of our legal fees in this public setting.
Well, I would like to read it. Thank you. That's all I have.
Motion to adjourn.
No, we have to vote.
Can we get a vote on that? I'd also,
Yeah, I was trying. It was a trial back before.
would love to get a vote also on item 5, the special event permit fee waiver. This is Half Moon Bay Seafood Marketing Association looking for clarity so that they can start marketing their event.
I thought
That didn't get
one.
pulled.
Took that one.
Oh, I apologize.
That's been
I
approved.
apologize. Thank you very much.
Lisa, still here?
No,
No,
sorry about that.
So we're voting on the bills and claims.
Yeah, voting on bills and claims. Motion to approve.
I
by
moved.
Commissioner-
I'll second.
Ed moved, I seconded.
That's correct. That's already made.
President Mateusz,
Aye.
Commissioner Lorenz,
Aye.
Commissioner Chancarelli,
Aye.
Commissioner Brennan,
Aye.
Commissioner Bernard.
Aye.
Now,
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
third. Okay, you need a vote on that?
Yes.
All right, go ahead and vote. Roll call.
Commissioner Brennan,
Aye.
Commissioner Lorenz,
Aye.
Commissioner Mateusz,
Aye.
Commissioner Chancarelli.
Aye.
Commissioner Bernard.
Aye.